Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. Douglas surveyed the battlefield with a deep sense of weariness. He was exhausted. The fight had been brutal, but what it had been fought for, he couldn't say. That wasn't his concern. His job was to follow orders, to fight whoever he was told to fight. Right or wrong, good or bad, it made no difference. He had been part of Albert's honorable mercenary company since he was 15. Now, 20 years later, he had had enough. Enough of the killing, the suffering, the stench of fear, and the screams of dying men. Enough of endless travel, never having a place to call home. He had seen more of this land than most men ever would, marched across its breadth, sailed its seas. The youngest of 7, Douglas had never stood to inherit the family farm. His future had been clear, laboring under his brother or some other landowner, never his own man. At 15, that had felt like a prison. The mercenary life had offered freedom, adventure. And there had been good times, plenty of them. Wine, laughter, and the kind of friendships forged in battle. But there had also been loss. Too much loss. Friends buried in shallow graves. Some of them men he had once fought beside, only to later meet them across the battlefield when a contract changed hands. It had happened too many times. He no longer made friends. He couldn't bear to. It was time to leave. He made his way to Albert, who stood overlooking the remnants of the battlefield. Douglas, thanks for today, Albert said. Your men made all the difference. When that last charge hit, I thought we were done for. The way your unit held the line, it turned the tide. I'll speak to Baxter, make sure there's something extra in the payout this time. Give it to the families of the ones who didn't make it, Douglas replied. God knows, there are too many of them. How many? Douglas shook his head. I don't know yet. I do know young Michael didn't make it. Took an axe to the head. Split him like a melon. 19 years old. Just a boy. Albert exhaled sharply. Damn, I was just getting to like that kid. I'll make sure his mother gets his share. Douglas hesitated, then spoke the words he had been holding back. To be honest, I've had enough. 20 years of this, and I don't feel it anymore. The blood, the killing, I can't keep doing this. And how many Michaels have I been responsible for myself? I don't even know, but I do know I can't go on. Albert studied him carefully. Are you sure? I don't want to lose you. I'm sure. We both know what happens when a man stays too long. Remember Thomas? He wanted out, but we convinced him to stay one more campaign. First battle, he hesitated. Tried to wound instead of kill. And it got him killed. That's going to be me if I don't stop now. Albert held his gaze, then nodded, a wry smile forming. You're right. It happens to all of us. I only hope that when my time comes, I have the sense to see it. I'll have the quartermaster settle things. Should be ready in a couple of days. Good. I'll let my men know. Douglas stretched, rolling his shoulders as he turned to leave. But first, there's a flagon of ale with my name on it, and a certain young lady who's about to have the time of her life. Albert chuckled, shaking his head. The men understood his decision. They had seen it before. When it was time, it was time. The celebration lasted all night, and yes, the young woman would remember those 2 nights for the rest of her life. He set off with all his worldly goods, which even he would admit that for a man in his position was quite a lot. He had 6 horses, 2 of which were war horses that any man would be proud to ride into battle. He had several sets of mail, any one of which would be worth a good-sized farm, a good farm with good fertile land. He had weapons, swords, axes, shields, knives, and his favorite, his bow. It was a powerful bow that he had made, himself. He was proud of his bow. His purse was full of gold. Lots of it. All in all, he was one of those rare creatures, a rich and successful mercenary. He made an imposing sight as he rode through the countryside. He stood 6'4", with piercing blue eyes, and his dark hair was done in the customary style of the warrior's braid. He was a big, powerful man, but with speed that belied his size. Many had found, to their cost, that he could move more quickly than any man his size had a right to. He had decided to travel south to where it was said the climate was mild and the farmland good. In the last 20 years he had been wet, cold, and miserable, far too many times. He never wished to experience that again. He had been traveling for around 3 weeks, reveling in the fact that he didn't have to be up at dawn. Training, he still did, but he didn't have to, and that made all the difference. And being able to travel at his own pace. He had arrived in a small town, a village, really. It had not much to recommend it, a tavern, stable, a couple of shops, and a blacksmith's. It was, however, on the main trading route between Lord Blackmore's land and Baxter Shieldsmith's. These men hated each other and encouraged bandits to prey on each other's people. That made it a dangerous and somewhat sparsely populated area. Farms would be raided and burnt, The people would be robbed, assaulted, and killed. All in all, it was not a good place to be. Douglas had stopped for the night. He made a fine sight, arriving with 6 fine animals loaded with what could almost be considered a king's ransom. He inquired if there was anywhere secure he could leave his animals and goods, and was told the stables. He took one look and decided he would sleep in the hayloft that night. He saw a lad standing nearby and called him over. He asked him about the town, where was a good place to eat, what, if any, problems he might face. He was told that the only place to eat was the tavern. He was also informed of Felix. He was in charge of the local militia. He was also a braggart, bully, and a thief. Douglas thanked the boy and then asked him if he wanted to earn himself a silver shilling. The boy's eyes lit up, then clouded over. What do I have to do to earn this money? He inquired suspiciously. Just watch my things, and come and get me if anyone tries to steal them, Douglas answered, laughing. Okay. The boy eagerly agreed. Douglas made his way to the tavern. It was a small, dark, dingy sort of a place. He asked the landlord, a fat, slovenly man, what they had available to eat. We got bread and meat stew, the man replied. Anything else? No, that's all we got. Take it or leave it. I guess I'll have to take it then. Oh, and a flagon of your best ale, Douglas replied, more in hope than in expectation. The man looked at Douglas, sizing him up. He looked well-dressed and wealthy. That'll be 3 shillings, he said, putting Douglas's ale on the bar. Douglas just smiled and looked down at the man. I beg your pardon? I thought you said 3 shillings? Surely I heard wrong. The man swallowed hard. Gathering his courage, he answered, no, you heard right, 3 shillings. Douglas picked up the ale, took a mouthful, then spat it back at the man. If this is your finest ale, then I shudder to think what your cooking is like. This ale tastes like horse piss. You can keep it. Laughter erupted at this. It seemed that the innkeeper did this sort of thing quite often. They were glad someone had finally stood up to him. He made his way over towards the general store's shop in the hope of obtaining something edible for his supper. He was halfway there when 4 men strode purposely towards him. Douglas stopped in the middle of the street. He loosened his sword in its scabbard. Those horses you came in with today, they yours? The leader of them said. Yes, why? What concern is it of yours? Well, you see, there's the little matter of tax that needs paying. A kind of toll, safe passage and all that. Let's say 2 of the horses and that purse you have on your belt. Douglas smiled as he replied, you really should go on the stage. You would make a fantastic comedy routine. Now why don't you just go home like good little boys and let honest men go about their business? There's 4 of us and only 1 of you. The tax has just risen to all your horses and your purse. 4 to 1? A bit unfair, isn't it? Tell you what, I'll pop over to the shop and give you time to get some more of your friends, okay? Make it a bit more even. Get high, was all the man managed to say. A knife suddenly materialized in his chest. The others stood stunned as their leader collapsed in a heap on the ground. Douglas drew his sword. Okay, who's next? Douglas asked, still smiling. One of them. He was just a lad, really, had a dark stain spreading down his leg. They all looked at each other, then ran. Douglas recovered his knife, wiping it on the man's body. Then he went through the dead man's things to see if there was anything of worth. Other than a few coins, the rest of the stuff was trash. There was his sword, which if it had been in the possession of one of his men, the man would have been mocked and ridiculed. It was rubbish. There was a snuff box, his eating knife, and a large key. Douglas was intrigued. What would a man like this be doing with a key? More importantly, what did he have locked up? Faces peered out of doorways and alleyways as Douglas finished his examination of the man's belongings. He threw most of them down into the mud. The final insult, telling all present that even in death this man was worth nothing. He made his way over towards the shop. Good evening. My name is Douglas, he said to the small, middle-aged man behind the counter with a smile. I'm after some supplies. I was not happy with what they offered at the inn, so I was hoping I would be able to purchase something to eat here. Also, I seem to have made a bit of a mess out there. I was wondering if you could get someone to clean it up for me. The man looked at him in astonishment. Felix, for that indeed is who the dead man was, had held the town in thrall for so long. To see him killed in such an offhand manner, and then the man who killed him act as if it was nothing. Well, he'd never seen anything like it. Ah, yes, quite, food. Ah, yes, I'll just go and get it. The man disappeared into the bowels of his shop. He returned a short time later with a loaf of rather dry bread. It was at least 3 days old, some ham that looked and smelt quite good, and some cheese that was outstanding. He also brought flour, eggs, and a large jar of honey. Douglas, remembering how the innkeeper had tried to cheat him, fixed the man with a steely stare. How much? The man looked at him and swallowed. He looked at his produce, looked back up at Douglas, and said, 6 pence. Looking at the things in front of him, that was a reasonable price. Good enough, I'll have it. Now, do you have anything drinkable? Please, not like that horse piss he tried to fob me off with at the inn. The man smiled as he replied, Yes, sir, we do. He produced a large glass bottle. This, sir, is the finest Frankish brandy. Sir, it's not cheap, it's 3 shillings a bottle. I know it's a lot, but I can assure you that it is the finest brandy anywhere in the world. It's at least 25 years old. It's like liquid gold, it slides down so smooth. Douglas smiled. He had been to Frankland and knew all about their brandy. If what the man was saying was true, then the bottle was worth all of the 3 shillings, and more. Let me see, he demanded of the man. The man, reluctant to relinquish the bottle without payment, grudgingly handed the bottle over. Douglas examined it. The bottle certainly was of the correct style. The seal was sound and unbroken. Very well, it appears this is what you claim. Sir, you have a sale. He asked for a sack for his purchases and handed over the cash. The man beamed as he took the money and packed Douglas's purchases away. He smiled even more when he realized that he would no longer have to pay Felix and his gang their security tax. Now then, what about the rubbish problem you have littering up the street out there? Who is going to clear it up? Who was he, anyway? Douglas inquired. Ah, well, sir, his name was Felix. He arrived a few years ago and just sort of took over. Anyone who refused his demands he beat up or killed. He has, or should say had, a farm just outside of town. He and his men took it over when they arrived. No one dares go near it, now. It seems I have just inherited a farm. I'll go over there in the morning. I'll need someone to show me where it is. Oh, there'll be no shortage of people wanting to do that, I can assure you. The chance to see that fat bitch get what's coming to her is something that no one will want to miss. Fat bitch. Felix's woman, Griselda. I use the term woman in its loosest term, mind you. She is the most obnoxious creature I have ever encountered. Mind you, her brats are no better. Have no fear, we'll all be there, tomorrow. Wouldn't miss this for the world. The man chuckled. Douglas returned to the stables with his supplies. He thanked the boy for watching over his things. Here you are, your payment. Tell me, what's your name? The boy's eyes went wide at the sight of the money. It's Simon. Tell me, Simon, have you eaten today? Simon shook his head. I will now, though. I can afford a bowl of stew at the inn. It's not very good, but at least it will fill me up. I tried to get some food there, but he tried to charge me 3 shillings. I told him what he could do with that. I got some things from the store's shop. You're welcome to share some of it with me if you'll tell me a little about this place. Simon looked at him, then nodded. Okay, I'll get us some water from the well. So, Simon, tell me about this place, asked Douglas as the two of them sat to eat their meal. Well, replied Simon, his mouth stuffed with food as he ravenously devoured his share, it's like this. We're not very big. There's only the general store's shop, the stable, the blacksmith's, and the inn. We used to get a lot of caravans coming through, but since Felix took over, we don't seem to get those anymore. They just seem to keep going. Don't blame them, really. Have you met Felix? He's a real nasty piece of work. If he sees you, he'll rob you for sure. I've met Felix. Trust me, he won't be bothering anyone else ever again. I need to go to his farm tomorrow to take possession. I was wondering if you would show me the way. The boy's mouth fell open. Then he exclaimed, take possession? That means you killed him? What about his family? What will they do? I'll decide that when I meet them. When a man has a family, he should think of them before trying to rob people. If you get killed or captured, well, there could be dire consequences for them. Them's the rules. I didn't make them, but I live by them. I have no family. All I have, you see here before you. As a mercenary, you have to think of things like this. Although I'd like to have seen anyone just walking into our camp to claim my things, laughed Douglas. The boy's eyes went even wider. You're a mercenary? Yes, have been for the last 20 years. Wasn't much older than you are now, but I must say, I was somewhat bigger. Tell me, how old are you? I'm 13, I think. Don't really know. Doesn't your mother know? She's dead. Died ages ago. She was the 304 here in the inn. She got sick and died. Toby, that's the stable owner, he gave me a job, here. I clean the place out and keep an eye on it. He feeds me and lets me sleep here. I do okay. I get at least 1 meal a day. Douglas looked at the boy. He was a good-hearted lad. Might have to have a word to this Toby about wages. I don't really hold with slavery, he thought. What about the rest of the area? What's that like? Well, for the most part, it's just farmers. There are about 10 men in the militia. Most are okay. Well, sort of. It was Felix really and Elijah. They are, or were, the worst. Who's Elijah? He's Felix's right-hand man. He's a real scumsucker. He likes to hurt people, just 'cause he can. I keep well out of his way, I can tell you. If I see him coming, well, I make myself scarce. I guess I'll meet him tomorrow, but right now, I'm going to get some sleep. Douglas retrieved his weapons and bedding. They both settled down in the hayloft. It was late in the night when movement was heard. Thin shafts of moonlight shone through gaps in the walls and roof. Simon heard it first. He woke Douglas. They heard 3 voices. Are you sure he's at the inn? said the first. Well, he must be. Why would he be here? It's only the boy here. I'll deal with him if he says anything, said the second. Well, I don't like it. It's not right. I know we charge taxes, but we shouldn't just take stuff. Anyway, this one's different. He's quick. Really quick. You didn't see how he killed Felix. I didn't even see him move. I just blinked, and Felix was dead. I've never seen anything like it. I think we should leave. We should never have come here, said the third. It sounds like you're the only one with any sense. Leave now, and I'll let you live. If you're still there when I get down, then you'll die, called Douglas from the hayloft. Douglas heard movement as the third voice bolted for the door. Come back here, you little scumsucker. I'll kill you when I catch you, yelled the first voice. Elijah, I think we should do as he says and leave, said the second voice. Douglas smiled as he made his way to the edge of the hayloft. He saw the two men looking round silhouetted in a shaft of moonlight. He strung his bow. He was at first reluctant to use his bow, as he didn't want to hit his horses. Now that he could see them, he could shoot them. He knocked an arrow, took careful aim, and loosed. He hit the first man squarely in the body. The arrow went right through him. The second man looked up towards where the arrow had come from. Run, Douglas shouted. The man did as he was bade. He ran for his life. Douglas lowered himself down from the hayloft. He moved towards the man he had shot. The man was slumped against one of the stalls. Who are you? The man gasped. My name is Douglas, of Albert's Honorable Mercenary Company. What were you doing trying to rob a man at night like this? You should have known better. Who are you, anyway? The man coughed. Blood came from his lips. I'm Elijah. I was in charge around here since you killed Felix. Help me, will you? I will if you answer one question. I found a key on Felix. What will it open? Please, help me. It hurts so much, the man pleaded. Answer, or I'll leave you to drown in your own blood. It's the lock on the main barn. It's where he keeps the loot and the slaves. Douglas nodded. He knocked another arrow, then shot the man through the heart. The man looked stunned, then collapsed to the floor. I don't think that was quite the sort of help he was talking about. Simon's voice came from above him. He was dying, anyway. The arrow had caught a lung. He would have drowned in his own blood, soon enough. Come down here, let me show you something. Oh, and while you're about it, light a lamp. It's as black as Hades, down here. The boy laughed at this and did as he was bidden. Once he came down, Douglas took the lamp and approached Elijah's body. Never approach a wounded enemy while he's still breathing. Look, here in his hand. Douglas lifted Elijah's hand. A knife fell from his lifeless fingers. Many a man has been killed trying to help a wounded enemy. I've seen it myself, too many times. If you want to fight me, you had better be good, and you had better be prepared to die. If you do not kill me, I will kill you. I am an honorable mercenary. That means we do not steal, we do not pillage, and we do not assault. However, we also show no mercy, and give no quarter on the field of battle. All know this, and we are much feared because of it. After a battle, we have a method of approaching a fallen enemy. One man kneels down with his shield in front of himself, whilst another stands to the side with an arrow knocked in his bow. The man with the shield pushes the fallen enemy over with his shield. If the man reacts and tries to attack his helper, then the archer shoots him. I have seen it time and time again, where this approach has saved lives. Mine own, included. If I had knelt down like this before shooting him, he would have stabbed me. What if a man on the field of battle wishes to surrender? Simon asked, horrified. Then he better run, and hope we do not catch him. Douglas quickly searched his body. He took his purse and weapons. I'll search him properly in the morning. Right now, I'm going back to sleep. Douglas climbed back up into the hay loft, curled up in his bedroll, and went straight back to sleep. Simon looked at him in astonishment. How could he sleep after killing a man like that? Simon lay there with his eyes open. Sleep just would not come. They were both up at dawn. Douglas did a thorough search of Elijah's body. Although Douglas found nothing of interest, he could see Simon looking at the piles of clothes. See anything you like? Douglas asked him. Well, these boots look good, and his trousers. Well, once they're washed, well, I could roll the legs up, and they should be all right. His jacket should be good, as well. I'm sure I'll grow into it. Douglas smiled. The lad probably only had the clothes he stood up in, and Douglas had to admit, they were pretty threadbare. Take whatever you want. Here, you can have his knife as well. I don't want it. We'll find out where he lived, and see if there's anything there worth having. He lived at the farm. Most of the militia do. Right then. Training first, then breakfast, then we'll be off to the farm. They dragged the body outside and left it on the rubbish dump. Douglas started with his sword work. He went through his forms, slowly at first, then getting quicker and quicker. He smiled as he saw Simon, first watching him, then trying to copy him, using a stick he had found on the ground. Douglas stopped, went into the stable, and retrieved a wooden practice sword. Here, try this. It'll help you get the feel for the weapon. He handed it to the lad. Simon's eyes went wide as he said, Thanks. Douglas started to instruct him in his stance, how to hold the sword, and the first basic moves. The session lasted for about an hour. Douglas did his stretching exercises to cool his muscles and wind down. Simon again copied him. They then had a breakfast of the remaining bread and cheese. It was after this that the question started. What's it like being a mercenary? How many men have you killed? Can you teach me? The questions continued nonstop, till Douglas's head began to spin. In the end, Douglas told him to be quiet. Listen, being a mercenary is tough. Each day could be your last. Your concern, your only concern, is to your company. Why you are fighting does not concern you. Who you are fighting for does not concern you. You fight for money and for your comrades. You do not concern yourself with right or wrong. The morality of the situation is not your concern. Every day you train, you fight, and you kill. You kill, for if you don't, he will kill you. Most cannot stand it for more than a year. I have done it for 20. I have killed more men than I can remember. I never knew their names, nor would I want to. How many children have I orphaned? I don't know. How many women have I widowed? Again, I don't know. The only thing I have, the only thing any of us has, is our honor. I have never assaulted, I have never pillaged, and I have never broken my word. That's it. That's the life of a mercenary. It's a hard life. But for those who can stand the hardship, for those who survive, it can have its rewards. I have no family and no children. My parents are dead. There is no one who would mourn for me. With my lifestyle, I could never take that chance. Never take the chance that I would be killed and my wife and children be left to starve, or worse. Then we are the same. I have no family. I have no one who cares if I live or die. If I become a mercenary, I have nothing to lose, for at the moment, I have nothing anyway. You are wrong about one thing, though. There is someone who cares. There is someone who would mourn. You are the first person who has shown me any sort of kindness. You shared your food with me. You let me keep those things. You don't care that my mother was a 304 or that I live in a stable. I would mourn for you. Douglas smiled at him. So you would follow me, would you? Train with me? Be my squire? I must warn you that the pay is lousy, the hours long, and the work is hard. So you still up for it? The boy clasped his arms, his eyes shining. Oh yes. Yes, please. Okay, let's get our things together, and we'll see what this farm is like. As they made their way towards the center of the village, Simon was walking alongside Douglas leading his horses. When they arrived, they were surprised that Felix's body was still lying in the street. It was obvious that some animals had gnawed on it during the night. Why hasn't someone moved his body? Douglas inquired of the folk standing around. It's up to the relatives to deal with the body, one of the men told him. So what happens if there are no relatives? Is it just left in the street to rot? Well, no. When the smell gets too bad, we drag it off to the rubbish dump. Either that, or dump it the river. Why not just bury it? Would be a whole lot easier, if not to mention a lot less smelly. The man just shrugged and wandered off. There were 6 of them who set off for the farm. As they walked, Douglas could see that this was good farmland. If properly managed, it could provide someone with a reasonable living. He noticed also how many fields seemed to be abandoned. He asked about it, and was told it was because of all the trouble. Bands of men would turn up in the night, assault and kill the occupants, then burn the fields. So, many had fled. It was all due to the stupid quarrel between the Lord and the Baxter. If only they would stop and leave ordinary folk to live their lives in peace. Douglas had to agree. He had seen it too many times, and been a part of it too many times. Ordinary folks' lives, torn apart just because of the machinations and foibles of the ruling classes. It was a warm day, the air was crisp and clear. The road to the farm was rutted and uneven. Douglas was glad he was using pack horses, as taking a wagon would have been a nightmare. It didn't take all that long to arrive at the farm. From a distance it looked like quite a good farm. The house looked to be of a good size, with a large and spacious barn. There was a stable block as well. As he drew nearer, he could see that things were not as good as they first appeared. The place looked really shabby. The gates were broken, and weeds grew up the side of the house. The thatch on the roof looked like it needed replacing. All in all, it looked quite run down. A large, ugly fat woman emerged from the farmhouse as they approached. She looked somewhat concerned at the size of the crowd. Yes, what do you want? She yelled. We've come to see you kicked out. One of the men yelled back. What do you mean, kicked out? You wait till Felix gets back. Then you'll see who gets kicked out. Douglas stepped forward, holding his stave in his right hand. Are you the wife of the former owner of this property? What do you mean, former? I'm Felix's wife, and he's the owner of this place. He'll kill anyone who says different. Not anymore, he won't. He tried to rob me last night. He attacked me. As you can see, he lost. His body is still in the main street in town. You might want to collect it, or you may wish to leave it there for the rats. The choice is yours, Douglas told her. She stood there stunned. Dead. My Felix dead? You killed him? You? Her face blackened. Her head lowered, and she bellowed like a wild animal. She charged at Douglas, her head lowered like a charging bull. Douglas waited until she was right on top of him, then deftly moved to one side and tripped the woman with his staff. She fell face first onto the ground. She slowly picked herself up, dusted herself down, growled, and charged again. This time, Douglas not only tripped her, but swatted her hard on her fat, but as she went flying past. She screamed as she hit the ground. Had enough? Douglas inquired of her. You keep this up, and I might be forced to hurt you. She slowly picked herself up and again charged at him. Douglas did things differently this time. He waited until she closed, then punched her in her belly, driving all the wind out of her. She lay there gasping like a landed fish. Douglas stood over her. He lay his stave at her throat. I won't warn you again. Next time I'll make sure you won't walk for a week. Now, turn over. You've proven yourself to be untrustworthy, so now I'll have to secure you. She struggled to catch her breath. Get away, she gasped. Douglas shook his head. He struck the ground with his staff before swinging it sharply, landing a firm blow against her midsection. She groaned, stumbling as she fought to breathe. Rolling onto her side, she clutched her ribs in pain. Without hesitation, Douglas grabbed her hands and swiftly tied them behind her back. He seized her by the hair. Get up before I deal with you properly. Douglas snarled. She staggered to her feet, tears streaming down her face. As the commotion continued, more people emerged from the house. Among them were two children, a teenage boy and a girl, watching in shock. Who are you? What are you doing to our mother? The boy cried out. Your father is dead. I killed him, Douglas stated coldly. I'm taking possession of the property. Your mother attacked me. Your father attacked me first, without provocation. Under the law, everything he owned is now mine. I've come to claim it. Daddy's dead? The girl wailed, then collapsed on the ground sobbing. Several other men had come out as well. Some of them spread out, making as if to attack. Douglas looked at them. You have 1 minute to decide whether to live or die. I'm taking these inside. If you try to attack us, I will kill you. This is your only warning. In 1 minute, any man carrying a weapon will be killed without mercy. Now decide. 2 of the men decided to lay down their weapons. The other 3 decided to attack. They drew their swords and moved towards Douglas. There's 3 of us. Let's see you take all of us at once. The biggest of the trio shouted, egging on his companions. Douglas stood and smiled. He did not even draw his sword. He just twirled his staff around his head. The first drew near and charged. Those who were watching could not believe what they saw next. Douglas simply moved too fast for them to see. He stepped to the side, swung his staff, which connected with the man's face, shattering his nose and upper jaw. As he did this, he also threw one of his throwing knives into the man's back. The other 2, seeing this, hesitated. Knives sprouted from their chests. They collapsed, gasping to the ground. Douglas moved towards the first man. He was still alive, making horrible gasping, gurgling noises through his ruined face, futilely grabbing at the knife in his back. Douglas moved forward, slamming the staff down onto the man's unprotected groin. The man convulsed with agony. Douglas knelt with his knee in the man's back. He withdrew his knife, then grasping the man's hair, lifted his head and cut his throat. He wiped his knife and replaced it in his bandolier. He moved over to the next man. He had sunk to his knees, staring stupefied at the knife in his chest. Douglas swung his staff, shattering the man's head. He fell in a heap on the ground. The third lay on his back, quietly whimpering. Douglas walked over to him, drew his sword, and plunged it into the man's throat. Everyone looked horrified at the events that had just so suddenly unfolded. Several of the men who had accompanied Douglas and Simon were throwing up. Simon looked a bit green, as well. Douglas cleaned his sword and retrieved his knives. Then he looked around. Anyone else? No? Then let's get these inside. I have some questions, and I'd better get some answers. Nobody argued. Everyone returned to the house. It was a solid, well-built place with thick walls, a stout door, and thatched roof. The place was divided into 2 areas, one for the animals, the other a living space. Within this space, it had a large fireplace with a substantial chimney containing 2 large ovens. In the center of the kitchen area was a large table around which were several chairs. Douglas motioned everyone to sit. He plunked the woman down on a chair. He then sat himself at the head of the table. Now then, he began, I think you understand that when I say something, I mean it. He looked at the woman on the body of your husband. I found this key. If you do not wish to join him, you will tell me what it's for. If not, then your son and your daughter will join those men outside. Your choice. The woman looked at him as if he were the devil incarnate. Her head dropped, and she took a deep breath. It's for the barn outside. Good. Now then, what's in the barn outside that needs such a lock? It's the stuff from all the travelers my husband that is, taxed. It's taxes for the Baxter. I thought this side of the river was Lord Blackmore's land. Well, he said it was for the Baxter. It's for one of those thieving scum-suckers. Anyway, what else is in there? She looked at him and swallowed nervously. There was an edge to his voice that was frightening, even to her. Slaves. His face went black. I hate slavers, he told her, each word dripping with venom. I hate slavers with a passion you could only dream of. Now tell me, what are your plans for these people? We keep them here to work the land. They were here when we arrived, so we kept them on to do the work around here. What do you mean by here when you arrived? Do you mean you stole those people's farm, their house, and just kept them as slaves on their own farm? The woman hung her head and just nodded. Well, let's go and meet these folk and tell them the news, shall we? His nostrils were flaring, and the muscles on his neck were standing out in his fury. He again grabbed the woman by the hair and dragged her over towards the barn. They all proceeded across the farmyard. The door to the barn was unlocked and then thrown open. The first thing that assaulted everyone was the stench. Several wagons were stored within its walls, but what made Douglas even more furious than he already was the sight of around 20 people shackled together, men, women, and children all clustered together. He turned to Simon. Get food and water. Get those fat brats to show you where everything is. Remind them what the consequences of disobeying me are. Yes, sir, at once. Come on. You two, show me where the food is, and fetch me some water, he ordered. Douglas went forward. He fitted the key in the lock and released it. The rest of the men came forward and helped all the slaves outside and into the sunshine. They were a pathetic group of people. They were half-starved, covered in sores, and they stank. A large tub was found in the kitchen. Water was heated and each and every one of them was given a bath. Douglas had some sheets hung from one of the beams to provide screens to give the women some privacy. New clothes were found, and once they were ready, food was waiting for them on the table. Most of the slaves were folk who were travelers. They'd had the misfortune of either being poor or of having something that Felix and his men wanted. One family, however, were the original owners of the farm. They were Peter and Rachel. They had 2 children, Mark, aged 9, and Fiona, aged 7. They told Douglas of how their world had been turned into a nightmare with the arrival of Felix and his men. What happened? Douglas asked them. Well, they arrived one day out of the blue and told us they were the new authority in the area. There were 10 men, the leader's wife, and her children. Then they told us they were taking over the farm. It was my parents' farm. When they objected, the leader, Felix is his name, he killed them. They then assaulted my wife and threatened to kill me and my children if I didn't do as they said. They brought the others here, one by one. The women they would take off and assault, the men they put to work. This used to be a really good place, but now, well, we want to leave. If I never see it again, it will be too soon. I can assure you that things will now be different. First off, Felix is dead. I killed him. Most of his men are either dead or have run off. These 2 are all that is left. Now what I was thinking is that I really do not want this farm. However, under the law, it is mine. I could just give it back to you, or sell it to you for a nominal sum. However, this would still leave you open to the first bandit or shyster who comes along. If I retain ownership of the farm and ask a nominal rent of, say, $1 a year, then this could not happen. I will be back each year to see how you are getting on, and, of course, to collect my shilling. If any problems occur, then someone in the town would be sure to let me know. I know you wish to leave this place, but could you recommend anyone who would like to rent this place for $1 a year? Peter looked at his wife. She took his hand. He could see her thinking, deciding what would be best for her and her family. It was a good farm. It had always fed them well in the past and would do so in the future. If they left, where would they go? They would be leaving as refugees with little or no money, precious few possessions, and no idea where they would end up or what they would be doing. Very well, we'll stay. Tell me what you intend to do with this lot, she asked, looking over at the prisoners. To tell you the truth, I have no idea. I thought of taking them to the nearest town and selling them to a brothel, but you can see for yourself the biggest flaw in that plan. Who the hell would want them? Why, what did you have in mind? They all laughed at this. Well, I was thinking of keeping them here as slaves. They worked us as slaves for the last 5 years, so I thought I'd return the favor. Douglas thought it over. It did seem like a good plan. He didn't want them, but he couldn't just let them go. The only other real alternative was to kill them. He didn't want to, but would do so if no other option was available. Seems like a plan. The only other option is to lop off their heads. I don't want them, and I'm certainly not dragging them around the countryside with me. I won't just let them go either. So, yes, I think that is the best option. I won't be no slave. Griselda screamed when she heard her fate. Fine. Come over here, kneel down, and I'll lop off your head, Douglas told her, drawing his sword. She looked at him in horror. You wouldn't. Why not? You're no use to me. I can't sell you, as no one would want you. The same goes for your kids, too. I don't want them, and I'm certainly not dragging them around with me. Come on, hurry up. It's time to decide your future. You were willing enough to treat these people as slaves. Now it's your turn. She looked into his eyes and saw not one drop of compassion. He would do as he said. He may not like it, but he would do it. Her children looked at her and then at Douglas. It was then they realized that the next few moments would decide if they lived or died. Their eyes widened and they clung to their mother. Please say yes. I don't want to die. Please, Mummy, please say yes. They both wailed and pleaded. She looked at him daggers. I don't have a choice, do I? Douglas shrugged his shoulders. You do, but it's a hard one. It's yours to make. Very well. I accept. For my children's sake, I'll be a slave, she spat. Good. We'll go back to town and get the blacksmith to make your collars. Collars? Yes, you will have slave collars. 1, so you can be restrained at night, and 2, so you feel the weight of them every waking moment to remind you of your station. They will be impossible to remove, so everyone will know you are a slave. It was at this point she broke down. She wailed and she sobbed. Her children joined her. They finally realized that their world had been turned upside down. Just a short while before they had been masters of all they could see. Now, all that had been brought crashing down, and they were reduced to the lowest of the low. To slavery. They knew they would receive no mercy. They had been cruel and merciless masters, and knew they would receive the same treatment in return. A few of the others decided to stay on as farm hands, no doubt just waiting their chance to inflict their vengeance on their former masters. Most of the others just wished to get as far away from their place of suffering as possible. Douglas spent the rest of the day going through all the things in the barn and house. One thing he did find was a large chest full of coins. This was the ill-gotten gains of the slavers. He divided these up between the survivors. The goods on the wagons he, for the most part, returned to their original owners. There were a few things he kept, like a few changes of clothing for Simon and some pretty dresses for all the women. The women were overjoyed with their gifts. It was a mostly jubilant column that made its way back to town. The only ones that weren't happy were Griselda, her children, and the 2 surviving militiamen. As they made their way towards the blacksmiths, a crowd was gathering. The blacksmith, a very large gentleman, looked at them as they approached. Yes, sir, how can I help you? I have some slaves I'd like you to collar. I'd also be obliged if you'd check the shoes on the horses. The blacksmith looked at Griselda and her children and smiled. He had dreamed of this day. He had suffered enough humiliation at her husband's hand. The blacksmith was a big, strong man, but there were 10 of them. What could one man do against 10? Certainly, sir, it will be my pleasure, he replied with relish. He went into the smithy and stirred the coals of the forge. He pumped the bellows to increase the heat. He waited until the coals were glowing red hot, then placed 3 narrow strips of iron into the heart of the fire. He bent them into shape over his anvil, then cooled them in a water trough. While they were still warm, he used his great strength to open them and snap them into place around the necks of the slaves. He then made each of them kneel down as he hammered a red-hot rivet into place to seal the slave ring. They are all done. They cannot be removed. The only way to get them off is to either cut through the bands or remove their heads. The assembled crowd laughed at this, as the 3 slaves broke down yet again and wept at their sudden change of fortune. Douglas turned to assembled crowd and said, "These people enslaved one of your own families. You did nothing. All of you together could have defeated those men, freed this family, and saved all those others the torments they suffered. You need to think of what happened. Next time it could be you. Band together, get some training, and no one will ever be able to do this again. I can't do it, because I'm leaving with young Simon here." One of the crowd stepped forward. "You can't take the lad. Who's going to work the stable for me? You'll have to work it yourself. Anyway, we're off now. I'll bid you all farewell and wish you luck. Talk to Peter and Rachel. Maybe they will sell you one of their slaves." Douglas gathered his things together, and along with a somewhat surprised and bewildered Simon, they set off. "No, I will not." The young noblewoman screamed at her parents. "I will not marry that old man. He's old enough to be my grandfather, let alone my father. First you try to foist me off with a man old enough to be my father. Now you want me to marry someone old enough to be my grandfather?" A pewter goblet flew across the room, bouncing off the wall, spraying its contents all over the floor. Her parents had learned long ago, to their cost, that if bad news were to be delivered, then first remove all breakable objects within reach. Lord Blackmore looked with despair at his only daughter. She was nearly 28 years old. She should have been married a decade ago, but there was always an excuse. They were either too old or stupid or ugly or poor or any number of these in combination. Admittedly, some of them were a little older, by maybe a decade or 3, but given that she has a reputation as a headstrong, somewhat spirited woman, it was getting more and more difficult to find suitable suitors. Now, dear, be reasonable. Earl Taflone is a very influential wealthy man. He, like us, requires an heir. Both you and your children will be extremely well provided for, her mother expounded. I don't care. He is old and ugly. I will not marry such an old man. I would rather go into a convent. She screamed. You will do as I command. You will marry Lord Taflone. I have given my word. Lord Blackmore boomed. Then you can just ungive your word. I don't care. I will not marry him. Tell me, where are all the young men? Where are all the sons of the nobility? It's been years since any eligible suitors have called. It's the Baxter Shieldsmith, isn't it? He's been warding them off and threatening them, hasn't he? Ever since I refused him, there have been less and less of them. That's when all the trouble started, wasn't it? The raids, the bandits? You only want me to marry Lord Taflone, so he would use his influence with the king to force the Baxter to stop his attacks. Well, I won't. You'll not sell me like some prize heifer. I'm your daughter, not some prize cow to be auctioned off to the highest bidder. Don't you care about the people? Don't you wish to stop the raids? The peasants are suffering grievously because of this. Why should I care about the peasants? They're just peasants. They will always be suffering and poor. They always have and always will. That's their station in life. The man I marry will be young, handsome, brave and strong. Not old, infirm and senile. I remember him from the ball. He smelt like a goat. She thought back to the ball that had been held just 2 months ago. She remembered Lord Taflone. He was a kindly man, polite, thoughtful but just a little vague, forgetful. It was unkind of her to mention his smell, but, unfortunately, he did smell like an old goat. She remembered his steward, a man named Ebenezer. He was an obsequious little man, bald and pasty-faced, with bulging eyes. The way her looked at her had made her flesh crawl. She shuddered at the thought. No, she would never marry Taflone. You really are a self-centered little bitch, aren't you? Where do you think all your fine things come from? Who do you think pays for your fine dresses? Your servants? Your jewels? It's the peasants working in the fields, the mines, and the woods. It's their tithes, their taxes, their rents that pay for it all. What will we do if they are killed or run off? Father screamed at her. Then get some more. There's always plenty of them. They're all around us, grubby, grasping little hands, always holding them out to touch us or begging for some coppers. I'm sure a few less won't matter. She shrugged. A few less? How can you be so dismissive of people's lives? Don't you care about the people around you? Of course I care. I care that they do as they are told and don't answer back. I care that they don't touch my things and put their grubby, smelly hand all over my clothes. By now her blood was up. And anyway, the only reason you care about these people is so they can supply another young maid for you to chase. As soon as the words had left her mouth, she knew she had gone too far. There was an unwritten rule that no one ever mentioned her father's addiction to young women, or her mother's interest in the young guardsmen that she would have visiting her quarters late at night. That's quite enough from you, young lady. If you would rather go to a convent than marry Lord Taflone, then I'm of a mind to grant you your wish. I will write to the Mother Superior at the convent at Riverdale. You can remain there until you come to your senses. Fine. I'd rather spend the rest of my life there than marry that old goat. Very well. Go to your quarters. You will remain there until we are ready to send you to Riverdale. He and his wife rose from their seats and left the young woman to ponder her fate. She returned to her rooms. She sat on a chair waiting for her maid. The young woman approached her, helping her from her dress into something less restrictive. Leave me, she commanded. The girl nodded and left. She waited until she was sure she was alone. It was only then she allowed the tears to flow. She threw herself on the bed and wept. It was late into the night when she stopped weeping. She dried her eyes, hardened her heart, and steeled herself for the ordeal she was now set to endure. She would not relent. She had made her decision. She would go into the convent and die an old maid. Never would she marry. There would be no heirs to her father's estate. In the kitchens, Mary the cook looked up. She could hear the shouting and screaming coming from the dining hall. She looked over towards the nervous young man standing by the fire. It's no use you fretting like that, Michael. Brianna will be down when her ladyship has finished with her and not before. What's going on? Lady Isabel has been given some news. I think we can safely say it was news she did not relish. What do you think will happen? I have no idea, but we'll find out in the morning. It was the following morning that Isabel discovered the full extent of her father's displeasure. When she tried to leave her rooms to walk in the garden, she found the door locked. She hammered on the door, demanding to be released. The door opened. To her surprise, she found herself face to face with the bishop. Her maid stood just behind him. "Milady, your father has instructed that you are not permitted to leave your rooms until you depart for Riverdale. There will be a guard outside your door at all times," the bishop told her. "So, he couldn't even come here and tell me himself? Very well. Tell him I no longer wish to see them, either my mother or father. Tell me, how long before we depart to my prison? I have written to Sister Agata, the Mother Superior. I should have her reply with the month. Inform my parents that I will no longer be dining with them. Nor, in fact, do I wish any form of correspondence with them. I would request that you allow Brianna to bring my writing things and my embroidery. She pouted. Very well, milady. With that, Lady Isabel was left to consider her fate. It was 5 weeks later that the party was ready to depart. Her party consisted of Bishop Radcliffe, his assistant Carlos, her personal maid Brianna, Lieutenant Allen with 3 men, and a guide. Lady Isabel, dressed entirely in black, walked stiffly towards her horse, looking neither left or right. She mounted her horse without a word. Mother came over to her. Please, dear, reconsider. If you consent to marry Earl Tathlone, all of this unpleasantness can be forgotten. Come now, think on it. Would it really be so awful? The headstrong young woman just stared straight ahead, ignoring her mother. Very well. On your head be it. We've tried our best. We wash our hands of you. Your fate is in your own hands, now. Whatever befalls you is your no fault of ours. Don't say I didn't try to help you. Now go, you ungrateful, selfish girl. With that, the small party left for Riverdale. As they did so, no one noticed Lady Blackmore give a sign to a footman. He nodded in understanding. A short time later, a lone rider left the castle and headed in the direction of Baxter Shieldsmith's lands. They had traveled about 2 hours when Simon spoke. Sir, why did you not wish to stay in the village? It's a good place. The people there are all right. Nobody starves. Douglas looked at him and smiled as he replied, there are several reasons I didn't wish to remain there. Firstly, this far north gets cold in the winter. To be honest, I have had enough, more than enough, of being cold. The people in this area are caught between 2 warring lords. They send teams of robbers and bandits out to harass and destroy the others' crops and villages. I am one man. I cannot fight 2 lords and their armies. I wish to settle in a land that is warm all year round, not too hot in summer, and not freezing in winter. A land where a man can raise his family without looking over his shoulder every 2 seconds. I would like that, too. It feels as if I have been afraid all my life. As long as I can remember, I have been put upon. After my mother died, I was lucky that Toby took me in and let me work the stable. At least it gave me a roof over my head and a little food in my belly. Well, there is that, I suppose. Now, however, you will have to train and train hard every day. Do not worry that you are not big and strong yet. That will come in time. In the meanwhile, I will train you to utilize the skills you already have. Being small, you will be quick and agile. These are the skills we will start with. They stopped well before dusk and set up camp. Douglas then started training Simon. Someone your size cannot hope to win against someone my size using strength. Quite simply, I'm a lot stronger than you. You, however, can use your speed and agility to your best advantage. He retrieved a small practice sword from his baggage. Here, use this. It is light, and you should be able to wield it easily. However, it will not stop a blow from my sword, so don't try. The first time you do in battle, either it will be knocked straight from your hand or will break. Either way, you're a dead man. The way you will need to fight is to dodge and weave. Never be where your opponent wants you to be. However, we are getting ahead of ourselves here. First, you must learn your forms. These are the basic moves you need to know before you even try to spar. We will work on these now. This they did, that night, and every night. They traveled for 3 weeks, with the weather gradually getting warmer. They had avoided the main towns in the warring lords' territories. Douglas did not wish to become embroiled in their conflict. The villages they did pass through were poor, and the people were suspicious of strangers. They knew they had left the area of conflict when the villages they passed seemed a little wealthier and the people more friendly. They had just crested over a rise when Douglas called a halt. There just ahead was a farmer's wagon. One of its wheels was broken. The farmer, with what Douglas took to be his family, were struggling to replace it. All their belongings were piled up beside it. Hello, the wagon. Could you use some help? The man looked up. He had taken logs and a large branch and was trying to lever the wagon up as his wife and son struggled with the wheel. He saw Douglas, who was obviously a warrior, and his young squire. He realized that if this man wished him ill, he would already be dead. Yes, we could. Fell into a rabbit hole. Broke the wheel. Douglas looked at the wagon. We need to chock the frame, otherwise it could fall as we change the wheel. There is a fallen tree over there. We could cut a length and use that. Have you an axe? The man nodded and went over to get his axe. I thank you, stranger. My name is Paul. This is my wife Miriam, and our son Peter, he said as he handed Douglas his axe. I'm Douglas, and this is my squire, Simon. Douglas took the axe and very quickly cut through the fallen tree. Very soon, they had the length of trunk they needed. Paul, his son Peter, and Simon all heaved on the branch. The wagon lifted up. Douglas quickly shoved the trunk into place. They then changed the wheel and removed the trunk. Douglas and Simon helped them reload the wagon. "What are you doing out here?" Paul inquired. "We don't see many warriors out this way. Those we do see, we try to avoid, as they tend to be in the employ of either the Baxter or the Lord. They never seem to have our interests at heart. They are either raiding us, burning, assaulting, and looting, or they requisition what they need. Stealing, in other words. They never pay for what they take, and if you go to the Baxter for payment, you are just as likely to end up in prison. We've had enough. We're heading south. I've heard that there is land to be had if a man is willing to clear the forest. We're going that way as well. I've decided to retire from the mercenary business and see how I fare as a farmer. I was raised on a farm, so am no stranger to what is required. I wish to go somewhere that is warm. I have had enough of being cold. I can sympathize there. I too will not miss having to break the ice in the wash basin each morning during the winter," laughed Paul. "No, I too will not miss that," chuckled Douglas. "Would you care to travel with us, as we seem to be going in the same direction?" asked Paul. This earned him a sharp look from his wife. Douglas noticed this and smiled as he said, "Madam, if I willed you any ill intent, then your husband and son would already be dead. I am Douglas, formerly of Albert's Honorable Mercenary Company. We do not rob, assault, or pillage. We know that we are unlikely to take anything from this world. All we have is our honor, which, I must say, I will defend to my last breath." Looking suitably admonished, she replied, "I apologize, Sir Douglas. As my husband has already told you, the only armed men we've seen are those out to rob us. You can understand that I am naturally wary. Of course you are welcome to join us, if it is your wish. If it would be no trouble, then we would be glad to accompany you." "Good. Well, that's settled then. Let's get going. We've lost enough time as it is," Paul said. The two boys looked at each other and smiled. They were about the same size and assumed they were about the same age, which they were. It was starting to get towards evening when thoughts turned towards making camp. Paul turned the wagon into a likely-looking campsite. "This should do us for this evening." Douglas smiled and shook his head. "You're not serious, are you?" "Why? What's wrong with it?" "Well, for starters, it's visible from the road. Also, if you look, there are several trails leading off into the trees. This tells me, without really checking, that this is what is known as a honey trap site. Prepare a good-looking site for the unwary traveler, lie up in the woods, and wait for the campsite to be occupied. Then, in the middle of the night, come along and either just kill them and take what you want, or," he told them, looking directly at Miriam, "take what they want and then kill or enslave them." "Where do you suggest we camp?" asked a horrified Miriam. "Well, with the wagon it is difficult. However, there will be somewhere just up ahead. We'll travel for another half-hour at most. I'll find us somewhere safe." Sure enough, 10 minutes later, Douglas found a suitable site. It was in a small clearing out of sight of the road. They had to traverse a small stream, but that proved no real problem. They immediately got to setting up camp. Soon a fire was going, and the smell of cooking wafted to the noses of 5 hungry travelers. Before they ate, Douglas and Simon went through their forms. Very soon, Peter was pestering his mother to be allowed to join in. Douglas smiled. "I think a stave might be a better weapon for you." He saw the disappointment on the lad's face. Douglas smiled. "I know what you were thinking. Remember, swords are very expensive." He drew his sword and showed it to the boy. "This sword would buy you a good farm. Can you see how the steel seems to flow and have patterns in it? That is how it is made. Different hardnesses of metal are forged together by a master craftsman to create such a blade as this. This sword cost over 500 gold crowns. I am a warrior. I have to have the best, because my life literally depended on it. What do you think would have happened to me if my sword had broken in battle? I have seen it happen. I have seen men, good men, die because of these things." The boy's jaw dropped open at this. 500 crowns was an absolute fortune. He knew his father had only managed to get 300 crowns for their farm. That was for the farm and all their animals. Maybe learning how to use a staff made more sense, especially if he were to learn from a master. His father also felt it would be a good idea for him to learn as well, much to his wife's consternation. They chose suitable branches, trimmed them up, and started. Douglas went over to his horses and retrieved his staff. He first showed them how to balance themselves. At first, Peter thought this was boring. This was until Douglas showed him just how fast and dangerous he could be. He asked Peter to copy him. Peter tried, but soon fell down. "Balance, Peter, balance. It is everything. Without it, you are lost. For now, however, I think dinner is ready. We can continue tomorrow." The food was very good. In fact, it was some of the best Douglas had tasted for some time. "Miriam, that was the best food I have tasted in a very long time. It really was superb." "Yes, it was," echoed Simon. "It's much better than either Douglas or me can cook. His cooking leaves a lot to be desired. Mine's not much better." They all laughed at this. Before they settled down, Douglas went round and set traps and alarms. He showed them all what he was doing and explained why. When I camped with my men, we were a large group. We would enjoy the luxury of having enough men to be able to post sentries or guards. However, sometimes we have to move about in small groups. We always set these to warn us of any unwanted nocturnal visitors, either from animals or men. It saved me on more than one occasion, I can tell you. Now, if you do need to relieve yourselves during the night, use this tree, here. He pointed to a large oak tree on the edge of the clearing. Do not go beyond here. If you do, you might not live to regret it. Their eyes widened at this. They resolved to do as he had said. As they all settled down for the evening, Paul turned to his wife. What do you think of our traveling companions? I think that we have been very fortunate to find them, or them to find us. He does seem to know what he is talking about. That he does. Let's face it, we lived in that village all our lives. If it hadn't have been the constant threat of bandits, especially after what happened to your sister and her family, we would never have left. Yes, I think we have been very fortunate indeed. Just before dawn, Douglas awoke. He gathered his weapons. He woke Simon. Stay here and keep the others here. I'm just going to check on that honey trap we spotted earlier. I have a bad feeling about it. I won't be long. With that, he disappeared silently into the woods. He made his way towards the campsite. Sure enough, what he thought was a family had camped there. He carefully scouted around and soon found 4 men lying in wait. There was one man on watch, but he looked like he was asleep. As dawn broke, the men made their way into the encampment. He watched as one of them slit the throat of the sleeping guard. They crept forward, they drew their knives, and made to stab their victims. Douglas knocked an arrow, drew his bow, then shot the nearest one to him. He quickly knocked another arrow, then shot the next man. The first man fell onto his intended victim, who screamed in terror at the sudden awakening. This woke the entire camp. By now, Douglas had another arrow knocked, and this was soon embedded in the chest of the third bandit. The last man looked round and saw his comrades fall. He took to his heels and ran for his life, disappearing into the trees. There were 8 people who had been sleeping. 2 were women. The others were 2 older men and 4 younger men. They all jumped to their feet in confusion. The 2 women clung to each other in terror at the sight that greeted them. The 6 men looked around in confusion and then in consternation as they realized what had happened. One of the older men recovered first. He looked around, taking in the scene before him, and realized just how close they had come to being killed as they slept. One of the men was looking uncomfortable, staring in horror at the dead men at his feet. Of the 2 women, one Douglas would say was in her late 20s, and the other was late teens or early 20s. Both women were attractive, but the older woman was a beauty. She was of medium height and had long blonde hair with a curvaceous figure. The younger woman was darker with a slim, athletic figure. The 6 men were more varied. One was older. Portly would be a polite way of describing him. He was late 40s to early 50s and obviously used to the good things in life. One was the same age as Douglas. He had the look of a soldier. One younger man was a soft-looking young man who looked like he had never done a hard day's work in his life. The other 3 looked like they were used to working outdoors. Sir, I must thank you for saving us. I am Lieutenant Allen of Lord Blackmore's personal guard. This is Lady Isabel Blackmore and Brianna, her maid. Bishop Radcliffe and his manservant, Carlos. And my men, Henry, David, and Sirius. This is our guide, Michael. He looked around and snarled. Where's Sirius? He should be on guard. If that lazy scumsucker's asleep again, I'll kill him. No, you won't. The bandits have saved you the trouble. I am Douglas, formerly of Albert's Honorable Mercenary Company. I have now retired and am traveling south. Tell me, sir, I am curious. Where are you bound, and what made you wish to camp here in such an obvious honey trap? The lieutenant looked horrified at the news of his man's death. Damn, I told him to stay alert. We are bound for the convent at Riverdale. The Lady Isabel is to reside there. Be confined there, more like, Isabel snapped. The bishop gave a strained smile, the smile never reaching his eyes. Our guide here said it was a perfect place to stop. We, of course, made the mistake of trusting him. Tell me, why do you call it a honey trap? Lady Isabel asked. Douglas smiled as he replied, when you've traveled as much as I have, you'd tend to notice these things. The clearing is just too close to the road, it's too inviting. You can also see the trails leading off into the woods, evidence of people regularly moving off that way. I would hazard a guess you found a good supply of dead wood just behind those trees. We call them honey traps as they catch the unwary, milady. They all nodded. It's to keep you from wandering off too far, and to keep you all together. It's not the first time I've seen these. Those men have probably killed, assaulted, and robbed many a traveler in this campsite. They won't be doing that again. Michael stood there looking at his feet, refusing to meet the eyes of anyone. Douglas looked at him. He didn't have the look of a warrior. He looked more like a farmer who was chancing his luck. Look, why don't we all make our way to where my companions are camped? Get your things together. I just want to have a look round and see if there are any more little surprises waiting for us. They all agreed to this. They started to gather their things. Douglas searched the bodies. He found a purse containing several coins. He pocketed these. There was also a reasonable knife, 2 good pairs of boots, and a good jacket. Lady Isabel looked on in disgust as he pilfered the bodies of the dead. I take it you don't approve, milady? She sniffed haughtily and turned away. Douglas smiled and continued his search. He moved away from the bodies, widening his search, disappearing into woods behind the camp. 10 minutes later, he reappeared leading 2 fine horses, laden with goods. There's probably more around here somewhere, but I have to be getting back. My friends will be getting worried. Do you always rob the dead? Don't they deserve any dignity? Are we just going to leave these men where they fell? Aren't you going to bury them? Asked Lady Isabel. Douglas smiled in answer to your questions. Yes, I always rob the dead. They do not need their things now, but I or my comrades might. No, they do not deserve dignity. They are robbers, thieves, and probably assaulters. They do not deserve the respect of a burial. Animals need to eat, too, you know. He looked at the woman as she stared at him in disgust. I should have expected no less from the likes of you. She snarled. You know nothing of me, or my life. You sit there knowing nothing of the people around you. We are beneath your concern. Over there, behind that tree lies a man who has given his life for you. He has been killed because those robbers wanted your goods and your bodies, yet you could not care less about him. All my life I have fought for the likes of you, killed countless good men in order to satisfy the whims and honor of the ruling classes. No more. I will only fight for myself, now. Honor? What do you know of honor? His eyes narrowed with anger, his face blackened. He moved towards her. She looked into his eyes. She saw death there, her own death. She knew she had pushed him too far. For the first time ever she felt real fear. He moved up to her until he was just inches from her face. The camp went suddenly very quiet. Honor? I'll tell you about honor. He hissed, I am Douglas. Douglas of Albert's Honorable Mercenary Company. We do not break our word. We do not assault. We do not pillage. We do not kill peasants. We fight for money. Yes, that is why we get paid. We do what we are tasked. If you were a man, you would be dead for what you have just said. No one questions my honor and lives. Do you understand? Would you rather I had left you to these bandits? Would you in fact have relished the assault that these men would now be inflicting on you? Does this now turn you on? Or is it the fact that if they had despoiled you, you would have at least known a man once before you are incarcerated with the convent? I heard what you said. You are not willingly going there. Yes, it will be your prison. You beast. She screamed, her hands flashing up to strike him. He moved quicker than anyone else she had ever known and caught her hands easily. She screamed at him, but could not break his grip. He moved and placed both her hands in just one of his and held her. He could see her eyes fill with tears of frustration. Slowly she calmed down, her face full of fury. My father will have your head for this. No, he won't. You have displeased him in some way. Otherwise he would not be banishing you. Either you have been caught with someone he deems beneath your station, or you have refused to marry someone of his choosing. She looked into his face. Her eyes clouded over, and the tears she had been fighting finally flowed. How did you know? He wants me to marry a man old enough to be my grandfather. He must be at least 70. I will not. I cannot. For this he has banished me until I change my mind. This I will never do. What's your father's name? Lord Blackmore. I am Lady Isabel Blackmore. Ah, this is the man that ravishes the land between here and Baxter Shieldsmith's province. Why is that? What is the quarrel between them that brings them to cause so much suffering to their subjects? That is not the concern of you commoners. You would do well to keep out of the business of your betters. Our betters? You? Our betters? You bring death and devastation to poor peasants, whose only crime was to live within your 2 lands. How many people have died? How many have starved or faced ruin because of this stupid quarrel? You neither know, nor I suspect do you even care. I'm sorry, but having to marry an older man does not seem as bad as having to watch your children die of starvation just because of a quarrel between 2 warring lords. As to being our betters, I think not. You may be richer, you maybe have more power, but betters? No, you know nothing of what you speak. Isabel screamed as she stormed off. You should not speak to her so, Lieutenant Allen exclaimed as he came towards him. Douglas looked him up and down. He was shorter than he was, around 5'8", 5'9 foot. He was much smaller as well. He had a softer look to him, the look of a man who had spent his life comfortable within the castle's walls. Not for him the hard road of mercenaries. I will speak to her as I please. Unlike you, I am not in her, or her father's employ. The man backed off and looked away. They had packed their things and were now getting ready to mount up. Douglas smiled as Carlos knelt down so the bishop could stand on his back in order to mount his horse. Carlos winced as the bishop hauled himself onto his horse. Michael cupped his hands as both Lady Isabel and Brianna mounted up. The lieutenant and his men buried their fallen comrade. Douglas packed his booty, then led them back to where the others had camped. As he approached, he could hear Simon arguing with them. "No," Douglas said, to stay here. "He has set traps out all around. If you go wandering off, you will get lost, or worse, we'll find those traps he set. I just want to know where he went." He heard Miriam reply, "I am here. I have some more guests, so we'll be 13 for breakfast." They all looked in astonishment as Douglas led the party into the clearing. "Allow me to introduce the Lady Isabel Blackmore and her traveling companions. Bishop Radcliffe, his manservant Carlos, her ladyship's maid Brianna, and their guide Michael. Lieutenant Allen and his men, Henry and David." He turned to the travelers. "This is Simon, my page, Paul, Miriam, and Peter, their son. They are farmers who are leaving these lands to escape the constant harassment and violence that the stupid quarrel between your two lords has brought down upon them. Now I suggest that we all have some breakfast, as we have a long day's travel ahead of us." Miriam and Brianna immediately went to fetch water, while Paul and Michael did the same for firewood. Soon the fire was lit and a porridge was being prepared. Douglas, Simon, and Peter started to work on their forms. He invited Alan, David, and Henry to join them. First, Douglas had them do some light stretching to loosen and limber up their joints. Next, he had them do their balancing exercises. At first, the three soldiers questioned the benefits of this. Douglas walked up to each of them and demonstrated his moves at full speed. They were stunned. He then asked them to practice the same moves. Each of them overbalanced and fell. Next, he had them collect their staves and showed the first moves. "I do not need these. I am a trained soldier," said David. "So you just want to spar, do you?" The man looked a little worried. "Simon, would you oblige, please?" "What? You want me to spar against the boy? Don't you like him of something?" Douglas shrugged and said, "He needs the training." The two of them took their positions. "Just remember, balance and speed. He's stronger than you, but you have balance and speed." Simon nodded. David attacked at once. Simon avoided his blow easily, delivering his counter to the back of David's knees. The man screamed and went down. Simon moved forward and placed his staff on David's throat. It was over in seconds. Point to Simon. "David, do you wish to continue?" "Yes, I was unprepared." They took their positions again. David was a lot more wary this time. He spun his staff and actually created a good defense. He attacked high. Simon ducked underneath him, then bringing his staff up, hit him squarely in the balls. The man screamed and collapsed in agony on the floor. Contest to Simon. "I take it you wish to retire, David?" The man, unable at this point to speak, just nodded his head. They waited until he had recovered enough to stand. Douglas then gave him back his staff. Right then, first positions. This time nobody argued. They were a strange group that was gathered in the woods. Lady Isabel sat aloof and alone, glaring disdainfully at those around her. The bishop sat with his manservant, quietly talking. Paul and Michael were tending to the animals, ensuring they were all fed and watered. Miriam and Brianna were preparing the food. Douglas, Simon, Peter, and the soldiers were doing their morning exercises. Soon the meal was ready. Plates were brought out, and the porridge placed upon them. A tasty herb tea was also brewed. Isabel picked at the offered meal. The others, even the bishop, ate with relish. "I must say, this is a delicious porridge. I compliment the chefs." "Thank you, my dears," the bishop stated, handing back his empty plate. "Yes, I must say it was very good," added Michael, his eyes never once leaving Brianna. "Yes, it was wonderful," chorused the others. Only Isabel remained silent. "What's the matter, milady? Something not to your taste?" asked Douglas pointedly. "Could do with a little honey," she replied. "Unless you have some honey you wish to share with us, I guess you'll have to do without. Now eat up, we have a long day ahead of us. Unless, of course, you do not wish to travel with us." She looked at him with disdain. She glanced over towards her traveling companions and knew without him the chances of reaching her destination safely were very slim. The fat bishop with his soft manservant, her maid, and the man who was supposedly a guide. It made her sick. The two of them could not keep their eyes off each other. Her bodyguard was no better. The lieutenant was only here because he had refused her mother's advances. The men that were assigned were the laziest men in the guard. Their sergeants were only too glad to see the back of them. She knew that to this strong, self-assured warrior, she was easy game. There were times she felt so hemmed in and controlled she could scream. "No, Isabel, don't do that. It's not ladylike. No, Isabel, you do not need to know that. That's what servants are for." All her life she had been told what to do and what to think. Now it was the turn of this brute, this killer, this monster. She finished her meal, handing her bowl to Brianna. "If you need to attend to your toilet, use the tree over there." I am going to disable the traps I set last night. Until I say, do not go wandering off into the woods, Douglas said, and disappeared into the trees. One by one they all went behind the tree Douglas had pointed out to do their necessary. Isabel, however, decided that she was not going to be told what to do by this lout any more than necessary. She went over to the tree, then moved deeper into the wood. She froze when she heard a voice in her ear. Don't move, not a muscle. Douglas bent down by her leg and disabled the trap that was about to send her high into the trees. He threw a log into the trap. It snapped and sent the log high into the branches. He turned to the woman and snarled, Listen, if I tell you something, it is for a reason. I will not always explain, as sometimes there will not be time. You can now see the reason I did not want you wandering about here. If I set traps, they are set to kill. When we are on the trail, if I say stop, we stop. If I say silence, it means silence. If you cannot do this, say so now. I will not have you endangering me and my companions with your arrogance. Now do what you need to do and get back to camp. We need to be moving on. She stood there, stunned. She quickly attended to her toilet, then returned to camp. As she returned, she heard Simon tell of how he met Douglas, and of how Douglas had killed the men terrorizing the town, of how he freed the slaves and took possession of the farm, of how he was renting the farm back to its original owners for $1 a year, of how he returned all the money and possessions of those who were held captive, and of how he took almost nothing for himself. She looked over towards where Douglas was helping Miriam load the last of the things onto the wagon, in complete confusion. Why had he not kept all the money? Why had he done what he had done? All mercenaries were killing monsters, beneath the notice of those of her class. They were beneath contempt. Yet here he was, this giant of a man. He had saved their lives last night, yet not once had he asked for any payment of any kind. He had not even inquired if the bishop was carrying any jewels. Everyone knew the clergy were rich. The bishop had to be carrying a fortune with him. They always did, didn't they? She was shaken out of her revelry when she heard Douglas tell them to mount up. They traveled all morning, with Douglas always on point. His bow stayed in one hand, with an arrow ready to be nocked. Simon rode behind him, leading his string of horses. Although the sun shone brightly, there was a gentle, cooling breeze, keeping the temperature very comfortable. They stopped for lunch in a shady glade by a river. A fire was started and tea was brewed. Bread and cheese was the fare. Simon was glad to get off his horse. For the last week, he had been suffering from saddle sores. Douglas could see he had a telltale gait. He went over to his pack and retrieved some cream. Take this and rub it into where you are hurting. It will ease the pain. In future, make sure you tell me if you are having problems. You are no use to me if you are sick, now are you? The boy shook his head. He took the cream and headed towards the trees. The bishop came over to him. I was wondering if you had any more of that cream. Myself and my companion seem to be suffering in the same manner. I have, but what would you be willing to trade for it? The bishop looked at him and nodded. How much? He asked, reaching for his purse. I don't want your money. I have enough of my own. Letters and numbers. I'm sure you and your companion can read and write. I want you to teach me and the boy. I can read and write some, myself, but I'm not very good. I'm certain the boy can do neither. No one has ever taken an interest in the lad. Now would be a good time for him to learn. Oh, and I'm sure Paul, Miriam, and Peter would like the opportunity as well. Better ask the soldiers, too. The bishop beamed, of course. We'd be only too happy to teach you. So it was that all of them started to learn their letters. It made Isabel and the bishop smile to see the adults, especially the big, fearsome warrior, struggling with the intricacies of spelling and grammar. His face screwed up in concentration as he tried to get to grips with the difference of things like through and through. They had to admit, though, that he was tenacious. While it was obvious he would never be a scribe, after 2 weeks he found that given enough time, he could just about make out what was written, as long as it wasn't too complicated. The others were making progress as well, with Peter outshining all of them. He seemed to grasp it instantly. Both the bishop and Isabel were impressed with his progress. You really should think of allowing him to come to the academy in Riverdale. I'm sure he would do well there, the bishop told Paul one evening after the evening meal. I would love to. Nothing would make me prouder. But where would we get the money for such things? How would the likes of us, poor peasant farmers, ever be able to afford such a thing? You are right. It will be a problem. I will speak to the abbot. There may be something we can do. I cannot promise anything, but we will see. Later Douglas spoke to the bishop. Tell me, how much would the fees be to send the lad to the academy? It would not be cheap, at least 4 gold crowns a year. Very well, we will talk to the abbot. If he is willing to make a deal with me. Well, let's see, shall we? You would be willing to pay his fees? I don't know about all of them, but I could probably pay half. If you and the abbot could find a way to fund the other half, then we could give the lad a chance to improve not only his life, but that of his family as well. That is very generous of you. Very generous indeed. I will certainly speak to the abbot when we arrive. Tell me, why would you do this? You hardly know the boy. Douglas shrugged. I have the money. What else am I going to do with it? I'm a mercenary. We are always surprised when we awake, each morning. Dead men can't spend it. Spend it while you live. The bishop looked at this man with a new respect in his eyes. Never would he have expected this, not in a million years. The other thing that Douglas had been insistent about was that everyone learn how to defend themselves to the best of their ability. They had all tried their best. Even Isabel who, in spite of herself, found she excelled with the bow. She used a light bow, of course. There was no way she could even hope to draw Douglas's war bow. She found she enjoyed the sense of power it gave her. No longer was she just a helpless female who needed protecting and doing for. She was a member of the team with responsibilities. For the first time ever in her life, she had been trusted with something. She found, as well, that she was reevaluating her opinion of Douglas. He was as he said he was. He was a truly honorable man. Not once had he tried to opportune any of the women folk. She was thinking back to some of the men she had known in the past, knowing that they had taken advantage of those who they considered beneath them. She knew also that he had warned her men that if they harassed any of the women, he would be displeased. None of them had harassed anyone. She also found herself doing the same for her fellow travelers. Paul and Miriam were good, kind people. They had given and shared the little they had without thought. That they loved each other was without doubt. Their son Peter was a very clever lad. He was also polite, kind, and thoughtful. Simon was a revelation. He idolized Douglas. That was never in doubt. He also trained harder than anyone else. He was always the first up, never shirking any job no matter how odious. He was very solicitous to her, as well, always asking if she needed anything. Michael and Brianna were lovers. That much was obvious to anyone with eyes. They were never apart. Michael trained as hard as the rest, especially when Douglas had pointed out the fact that he might have to defend his love against bandits. He really was becoming a demon with his stave. Even her own soldiers had taken to this new regime. They were certainly improving. The bishop and Carlos. Now they were a conundrum. She had her suspicions, but he was a man of the cloth. That sort of thing was against the teaching of the church. She had heard of such things, but really? The bishop? Surely not. They were very close, though. Much closer than servant and master usually were. It was nothing she could put her finger on, just the odd look, the slight lingering touch. She mentioned this to Douglas. Oh, without a doubt. Doesn't it bother you? No, why should it? They are grown men. What they do in private is their business. We had men like that. I remember one couple particularly. Charlie and Mark. They loved each other dearly. You only had to look at them to see it. They were nicest, kindest pair you could wish to meet, unless of course it was on the battlefield. They were inseparable. They died together as well. We had been cut off and were trying to break out. Charlie had been wounded and Mark would not leave him. After the battle we found them. They had died in each other's arms, one protecting the other. We buried them the same way. The priest said it was an abomination. We told him if they did not bury them as we had told him, then we would bury him instead. He did as we bid. Neither of them saw Carlos listening to them from behind a tree, nor did they see the smile, nor his tears as Douglas told his story. For days later, they came across a family sitting by the side of the road, surrounded by a few meager possessions. They had 3 small children with them that looked cold and hungry. Douglas went over to them. As he did, so he saw the fear in their eyes. Hello, what are you doing here? Our farm was attacked by bandits 2 days ago. They burned everything. We hid in the vegetable storehouse. Fortunately, they did not find us, but everything we had is gone. We have nothing. They killed all our animals and burned our crops. My father lives in Porrington, a village 2 days away. We are hoping he will be able to take us in. If not, well, our future looks bleak, the man told him. What of your lord? Won't he help? He doesn't even know we exist. All he cares about is his rent. The farm is finished. They burn everything. The house, the barn, the cowshed. It's all gone, everything. What are we to do? Have you eaten? Any of you? No, sir. What little we had, we gave to the children. What the bandits didn't destroy they stole. What they couldn't steal they destroyed. Why did they do this, sir? We are simple peasants trying to make a living. We are not rich, and our farm was not worth much. Why did they have to destroy it? I do not know. I do know, though, that you and your family are the backbone of our society, our bedrock. Without you, there would be no lords, Baxters, or kings. Let us help you. I'm sure you could all do with a good meal. It must be nearly dinner time. We'll make camp here and get a good feed on the fire. Miranda and Brianna came over to help the traumatized family. They gathered up the wife and children. Douglas went over to the man. My name is Douglas. I am Trevor. You did well protecting your family from those scumsuckers. You've lost things, yes, but they can be replaced. Houses and barns can be rebuilt. Your family, your wife and children, They are what is important. If you had tried to fight those men, you would have been killed. Then your wife would have been assaulted and your children enslaved or killed. I know what it's like to win, but I also know what it's like to lose, and to have all you have worked for taken from you. I've had to start again many times. It's not easy, but it can be done. Yes, I know what you say is true, but it still sticks in my craw that I hid like a child while those animals rampaged through my home and stole and destroyed all I have worked for. I know, but what weapons training have you had? What weapons did you have on hand? Did you have a good suit of armor? A coat of mail? A good sword and shield? I'll bet those bandits had some of those things. They would have cut you down without a thought. No, you did the right thing. While the camp was made and a meal prepared, Douglas went to his pack horses, the ones he'd taken from the bandits. There he found a couple of warm cloaks, some bolts of good cloth, and a pair of very small boots. He approached the family. I don't know if these will help. I took them from some bandits I caught the other day. You are welcome to them, if you can use them. The woman came over to him with tears in her eyes. Thank you, thank you. I don't know how we can ever repay you. When we saw you approaching, we were worried that you were some of those raiders. For you to show us so much kindness. Well, as I say, I don't know how to repay you. Douglas looked at the woman and then over towards Trevor. First you can tell me your name. It's Annabelle. Well, Annabelle, you can make sure you thank your husband for keeping you safe and not doing something stupid like going out to face those bandits. If he had been killed, then where would you have been? She reached up and kissed Douglas on the cheek. Thank you. I'll make sure I do. The food was served and they all dug in. Everyone went to their things and found something for the family. Brianna found a blouse, Michael a shirt, the bishop a coat. Although it was far too large, Annabelle said she could take it in. Paul and Miriam found a couple of old pairs of trousers that should fit 2 of the children. Carlos found a blanket. Alan, Henry, and David managed to find a spare pair of boots, a cloak that belonged to Sirius, the sleeping guard who was killed, and his jacket. Isabel looked on as everyone rallied round and found something for the family. Some of it was old and worn, some of it was in good condition. She thought of her own family, of those she knew. Not one of them would have lifted a finger to help these people. They would have ridden straight past with barely a sideways glance. It did not escape her notice that those with the least, Paul and Miriam, were, after Douglas, the first to offer help. They gave of the little they had. Everyone else had then chipped in. They were all looking at Isabel. She smiled, went to her baggage, and found a fantastic dress. She brought it over to the woman. Here, I have this old thing. I know it's not very good. I brought it in case of being forced to do some dirty work, like digging or such. Annabelle's eyes widened with surprise. It was the most beautiful gown she had ever seen. It's beautiful. No, I really can't accept it. It's too much, really. Go on, please. It really is an old one. I have several more much nicer ones. Would you like to see if there are any others you prefer? No, it's okay. This one will do fine. Look, why don't you get washed up? Then we can get you into this dress for dinner. Give the menfolk a surprise. Why don't you get changed in the wagon? Called Miriam. Annabelle nodded, and together she and Lady Isabel went to get changed. Soon dinner was ready. Isabel brought Annabelle out. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Annabelle, announced Isabel with a flourish. Heads turned and jaws dropped as Annabelle emerged from behind the wagon. She looked fabulous. Wow, exclaimed Paul. Oh my, echoed Brianna. My darling, you are so beautiful, said a stupefied Trevor, taking his wife in his arms. I always knew you were gorgeous, but, wow. Annabelle reached up and kissed her husband with real passion. Thank you. Thank you for keeping us safe. She then turned towards Isabel. With tears in her eyes, she threw her arms around the startled woman. Thank you, all of you. What you have done for us, well, words cannot describe it. We will never be able to repay you for your kindness. It was the bishop who spoke. Was it not our Lord who said, that which you do for the least of these, you do for me? As I see it, my dear, we are simply doing as our Lord commanded. I could no more ride by and ignore you than fly through the air. It is just not in my nature. All I wish is that if you ever see someone who needs your help, that you give it to them just as freely, Douglas said to them. Well, Sir Douglas, we surely will. The children ran up to their mother and threw their arms around her. You look lovely, Mummy, they chorused. The food was brought, and it was devoured with relish. All the bowls and plates were soon licked clean. It was by now starting to get dark. They would stay where they were for the night. Douglas went out to set his traps, as usual, accompanied, as usual, by Simon. He told them where they could go and attend to their needs. You better do as Sir Douglas says, Isabel told them. I ignored him, and very nearly paid a high price. We shall. Later that evening Douglas spoke to Isabel. Why do you call me Sir Douglas? You go around rescuing folk at every turn. You saved Simon and took him on as your squire. You helped Paul and Miriam when they needed it. You saved us from certain disgrace and death, or slavery. Now you have saved Trevor, Annabelle, and their children. You could have just ridden by and ignored all those around you. I know many who would have done just that. If anyone deserves the accolade of Sir, then it is you. She kissed him on the cheek and went to her bedroll. It was a very surprised and confused Douglas that lay in his bedroll that night. 2 days later, they arrived at Porthampton. It was a small but prosperous-looking village. The houses were well kept, the fields planted, the fences maintained, and there was livestock in abundance. The headman came out to see them, obviously more than a little bemused at the sight of their strange party. He looked up and down the party, wondering who was in charge. Finally, he approached the bishop. "Welcome to Porthampton. My name is Alfric. How may we be of service?" "Thank you, Alfric. Allow us to introduce ourselves. I am Bishop Radcliffe. May I introduce Lady Isabel Blackmore, Sir Douglas, and their servants and guards. We also have Paul, Miriam, and their son Peter, and we also have a family with us that were attacked by bandits. They are Trevor, Annabelle, and their 3 children. They have family here. We were wondering if you could direct us to them." Trevor, Annabelle, and the children stepped forward. "Trevor? I remember you. Bandits, you say? Thank God you are safe. There have been some terrible reports lately. Several attacks have been reported. Nothing, it seems, can be done. What are poor peasants to do? Anyway, enough of that. I'll send word to your father and let him know you're here. I'm sure he'll be overjoyed to see you. Please, all of you, please join me for a meal." He led the party towards his house. A meal was prepared and conversation flowed. Trevor's parents arrived and were overjoyed to see their son and his family safe. They were less than pleased when they heard their news. "It's a shame that you could not rescue something. The farm next to us is vacant. The Borings, you remember the Borings, don't you? Well, they caught some kind of fever last winter. Carried the both of them away within hours of each other. Their sons want to sell the farm. They want 400 gold crowns for it. Good land it is. Always kept them well fed. The house is boarded up now. Seems so sad to see it empty. 400 gold crowns. Where's a man supposed to get that kind of money around here?" Douglas spoke up. "Tell them I'll pay them 300, today, here and now. Go fetch them, and we'll sign the papers. Of course I'll need a good tenant to manage the place. I'd say a rent of shilling a year, and 10% of the harvest." They all looked at him in amazement. Even those in his party were stunned. They knew he was generous, but this was unbelievable. Trevor's jaw dropped. Annabelle sat there with tears running down her face, unable to contain her joy and relief. Isabel also sat there in stunned silence. Never had she seen such an act of kindness. It was Trevor who spoke first, his voice quivering with emotion. "Thank you, Sir Douglas. This is unbelievable. You truly are a noble man, noble of heart and noble of deed. Tell me, why would you do such a thing?" "It is to repay an old debt. I can rest easier, knowing I have laid an old ghost to rest." They waited for him to continue, but when it was clear that he would not, Alfric spoke up. "Tell me, Sir Douglas, have you no last name? From whence do you hail?" "I hail from a small village I doubt any of you have heard of, Homevale. It is far away to the north and to the east. Both the land and the women were fertile. There was both food and children aplenty. I was the youngest of 7. I decided I would have better fortune on the road. It seems I was right." "It does indeed, Sir Douglas of Homevale. It does indeed," replied Alfric. Douglas went out to his baggage and returned with a large pouch. He placed this on the table. The 2 men soon arrived. They had a greedy, grasping look to them. Their eyes widened when they saw Douglas's pouch on the table. "I understand that someone here wishes to buy our parents' farm? Well, that farm means a lot to us. We could not let it go for less than, say, 500 crowns. Douglas looked at the pair. "What are you intending to do with all that money? It's dangerous traveling around the countryside. Just ask my companions." Douglas had decided he didn't like or trust this pair. They had barged right in and started talking money. No introductions, no explanations, nothing. "We intend to set off from this godforsaken place and seek our fortune," said one of the brothers. "I'll give you 100 crowns and a good horse each." "Riding horse or war horse?" asked the second. "Which would you prefer?" inquired Douglas. The second brother looked at the first. 100 crowns each and a war horse each," replied the first brother. Douglas knew he had them. They either wanted to be mercenaries or turn bandit, raiding those who they used to consider friends and neighbors. He had not, however, agreed to saddles, bridles, or arms. These he decided would be extras. No, war horses are worth 100 crowns apiece. 2 war horses and 50 each for the farm, the farmhouse, all the animals, implements, crops, seeds, and indentured servants. Everything, all of it, lock, stock, and barrel. Here and now, in front of these witnesses. What do you say? The 2 brothers looked at each other. 75 each, and a war horse each. "And you have a deal," said the older brother. "I am Sir Douglas of Homevale. My word is my pledge. You have a deal. Now shake on it. The older brother took his hand and shook it. I am Maxwell. I make this deal. The second brother took his hand and shook it. I am Marcus. I make this deal. They then went out to the stables. Douglas went over to the horses. He approached each one in turn, making sure the horse saw him, as was not startled by him. He took each one's head in his hands and blew gently into their noses, ensuring that they had his scent. He then placed a rope bridle around their necks, then led each horse out in turn. Where's their tack? Where are the saddles and bridles? Asked Maxwell. The deal was for the horses. No mention was made of tack. Surely you must have saddles and bridles of your own? No one buys horses without ensuring they have saddles and bridles. The two brothers looked at each other in embarrassment. They had saddles. They were old and worn. They were made for much smaller horses. Douglas took one look. They are no good. They are made for smaller horses. If you use those, you will injure the horses. You will need new saddles. Is there a saddler in this village? Yes, I'll go and fetch him, said a smiling Alfric. Alfric returned with the saddler, and the man approached the horses. Then he stopped. Are they war horses? He asked. Yes, they are, Douglas replied. The man came towards the horses from the front. He did the same as Douglas had done, and took each horse's head in his hands and blew into their nostrils. The horses then allowed him to handle them. Why are they doing that to the horses? Isabel asked Alfric. Just watch. All will become clear. Douglas had collected 2 saddles from his supplies. Will these be suitable? The man examined them. Yes, they should be okay. I can work with them to make them fit. Douglas looked at the 2 brothers and said, I will sell you these saddles for 10 shillings each. Without them, you will not be able to ride these horses. It was with sullen expressions that they handed over the money. Maxwell, taking his saddle, came at his horse from the rear. Watch out, Douglas called out. The horse kicked out, fortunately striking the saddle Maxwell was holding. The man flew backwards, landing heavily on his back, totally winding him. Douglas walked over to him. Are you okay? You must be careful. These are war horses. You never approached them from the rear. Did you not watch how both myself and the saddler approached them? If you do not treat them with respect, then this is what will happen. Tell me, what exactly were you expecting with the war horses? Well, I wasn't expecting a horse that would try and kill me every time I approached it. What horses have you ridden before? We have horses on the farm. We have ridden them. We can ride, you know. I don't doubt you can ride. I expect you have ridden riding horses and farm horses and dray horses. These are totally different beasts. Look, I'll saddle him up and show you what to expect. Now before we start, just let me say, once I'm mounted, nobody, and I mean nobody, will approach the horse. You will all stand behind this fence. He will rear. He will kick. He is a weapon, a dangerous weapon. That is why they are so feared on the battlefield. He went and collected his saddle. He also brought his spear and shield. Again he approached the animal from the front, talking quietly to it. Again he blew into the horse's nostrils before saddling the beast. Once mounted, the horse's head came up, his ears went back, and he started to snort and buck. Douglas kicked the animal once, and it took off. There were no reins as his hands were holding the weapons. They raced over the fields. It seemed like the horse was just glad to be able to run and run. He charged back towards the fence that they were all standing behind. The horse reared, his front hooves flailing at them. Several of the women, and some of the men, screamed. The horse then turned and kicked the fence, causing the bars to rattle. Douglas rode the horse like he was glued to the saddle. He then rode around until the horse quieted. He turned back to where they stood open-mouthed watching him. Well, now do you understand what you have bought? I can't ride that. It'll kill me, exclaimed Marcus. You're right. If you fall off and the horse's blood is up, then yes, there is a very good chance it will kill you. It was always the trick in bandit country to put these horses on the edge of the string. They would attack and kill or maim anyone who tried to steal them. If you come up behind them, they will kick you and probably kill you, or certainly maim you. These are dangerous animals. They must be treated with respect. Now, if you have changed your minds about these animals, I will buy them back from you for 50 crowns each. I will give you until morning to decide. They returned inside. They all looked at him in awe. Do you ride them often? Isabel asked. Not as often as I'd like. As you can see, they are not toys. They cannot be used for normal riding. If they come across anyone, especially a child, well, the horse will kill it. Once in battle mode, these animals are difficult to control. I have a horse for normal riding. Now he is a sweet beast. A gentler animal you could not wish to meet. You could not ride him into battle, though. He would stop at the first enemy soldier and expect an apple or a carrot. Look, let's go back outside and I'll show you. Okay, this I've got to see, she told him, laughing. They went back out to the stable. Douglas went to his horse and put a carrot in each hand. He stood with his back to the horse. The horse snickered, then gently nudged him in the back. Douglas held the carrot up, just out of reach of the horse's mouth. The horse moved forward with his head almost resting on Douglas's shoulder, following his every step. Isabel stood there, nearly doubled up with laughter. Tears were running out of the corners of her eyes. "Oh, that is so funny. How long did it take you to train him to do that?" "Oh, I didn't train him. I was putting some carrots away one day, and he came up behind me and nudged me. He then laid his head on my shoulder. I held a carrot up and walked forward, and he just followed. I think he does it now because he finds it as funny as well. Do you think he'd do it for me?" He looked over at her smiling face and felt his heart miss a beat. She was a beautiful woman, that was never in doubt, but it had been marred by the permanent scowl and sneer that she habitually wore. Now, when she laughed, it was like the sun had come out from behind a cloud. She was dazzling. "Are you all right?" she asked, puzzled by his sudden silence. He shook his head and blinked as he said, Yes, I'm fine. I'm sure he'd do it. Want to try?" "Yes, please." He handed her a carrot. She stood with her back to the horse, who came up behind her, lowering his head, and snorted in the side of her face. She squealed, and the horse reached forward, snatching the carrot from her hand. Douglas roared with laughter. She looked at him and scowled. "You knew he was going to do that, didn't you?" No, I didn't. He's a clever sod, he is." She stood there seeing him laugh. She started laughing, too. They stood there facing each other, roaring with laughter. The bishop, who had followed the couple outside, watched the byplay with interest. He had never seen Isabel laugh like that, not even as a child. He would have to keep a close watch on the situation. The peasantry may call him Sir Douglas, but the aristocracy would never accept him within their ranks. To be honest, he did not think that would bother Douglas in the slightest. He watched as Isabel offered Douglas her arm, and together they walked back to the house. The following morning, the two brothers called to say they wished to sell the war horses back to Douglas. He agreed and paid them the money. "You knew they were going to have to do that, didn't you?" Alfred asked him. "Yes, there was no way they could have had any experience of these kinds of animals. There are very few who can control them. Your saddler is one. You may find that he is an ex-mercenary. If he is, ask him to train your menfolk. You will then be able to defend yourselves against bandits. In fact, if you have time, I'd like you to take a ride with me around the town. I have a few ideas I'd like to run past you to help defend the place." "I'd be honored," replied Alfric. "Sir, may I accompany you?" asked Alan. "Certainly you may." They rode around the village. Douglas pointed out where, if he were in charge, he would build a wall or a ditch and why he would build it there. He explained how he would organize it and why. "If you make this place secure, you will attract the passing trade of the caravans. Make it a good place to stop. A stout wall and a deep ditch will deter bandits. They will go elsewhere to search out easier targets. Caravans and other travelers will stop here. Do it right, and this place will become very prosperous and soon grow into a town. You will not have to travel to sell your goods, as people will come to you. I know some people will object, they always do. But by bringing all the houses within the walls, and with a little reorganization, you can make this place almost bandit-proof. This is all very good, but what about our Lord? What about him? Do you ever see him?" "Well, no, we don't." "Then don't tell him. Once it's done, and especially when he sees the increased income, he's not likely to order you to tear it down. Now is he?" No, he isn't." "Thank you, Sir Douglas." "Thank you," Alfric said, smiling. He would do as Douglas suggested. They had the materials, they had the manpower. He had no intention of letting what happened to Trevor and Annabelle happen here. Lieutenant Allen looked in admiration at this man in front of him. He had never met such a generous man. He gave a small fortune to a family he had just met. He had saved their party, the one that Allen himself was in charge of defending. Never once had he criticized him or his men for their actions. He had allowed him and his men to join in with his training regime, which was far ahead of anything he had encountered before. He had even made that bitch Isabel smile. This was a man he could respect. This was a man he would follow. The following morning was one of goodbyes. Trevor and Annabelle were off to see their new home, safe in the knowledge that this time bandits were not going to take it from them. Douglas and the rest were continuing on their journey to Riverdale. The now reduced party was assembled and was soon on its way. It was a few days later, as they approached Riverdale, that Douglas called the column to a halt. "Don't like the look of this. You see that trail? Do you see how it bends around those trees?" Simon nodded, not really understanding why they had stopped. Douglas looked at him and smiled, remembering back when he had first received this lesson. Alan came forward, eager to learn as well. "Look at the line of the trees. Do you notice anything odd or strange about it?" They both looked at the line in front of him. It was then Simon noticed a slight dip, almost if one of the trees was missing. He could hardly see it, but now it was pointed out to him, he could just make it out. "Yes, there looks like a tree is missing. Just there, look." "Very good, young man. Well spotted. Now then, where do you suppose that tree could be?" Simon thought for a minute. "A woodcutter could have cut it down and taken it." "Yes, he could, but it's a long way from anywhere here. There must be more convenient trees for him to cut. Yes, you're right. Do you think it's bandits? Could be. Tell me, what can you hear around you at the moment? Why nothing? What should I be able to hear? What about birds and other animals? Shouldn't you be able to hear them? Yes, I should. There are people down there, aren't there? They've cut the tree down and frightened everything away, Simon exclaimed, realization suddenly dawning on him. They both looked up at Douglas in wonder. They would never have seen the signs and would have walked straight into the ambush. Now then, we have two options. We can either find another route round, or we can move towards the ambush forewarned and forearmed. Why are we stopping? Inquired the bishop. Douglas pointed out what he had seen. Are you sure? Douglas smiled. Would you like to go down there and find out? No, I don't think I'd care to. Very well. What do you think we should do? I think you should stay here while I go down there and have a good look around. For now, get the wagon off the road. This they did. Next, Douglas found good positions for them in case anyone came looking for them. He saw Isabel smile as he handed her a bow. Remember, nothing fancy. Aim for the center of their body. They will a lot less willing to try anything if they end up looking like a pin cushion. I need you to cover this area here. You will have Simon and Paul covering your back. You will be protecting Miriam and Brianna. Michael, the bishop, and his friend Carlos will be on the other side. Stay safe. I won't be long. He turned to Alan. If anything happens, go back to Porrington. Send word to his lordship and tell him of the situation. Get him to send more men. I will, Sir Douglas. Have no fear. I'll not let you down. I know. Good man. With that he vanished into trees. Isabel watched and waited, the tension rising within her. Miriam looked over to her. He'll be fine, don't worry. I'm not worried, she snapped. Miriam smiled as she said, Of course not, milady. He's very special, you know. He may not be nobility, but I'm willing to bet he's got more honor, courage, and compassion than any lord you've ever met. Isabel said nothing. She thought about what Miriam had said. To her horror, she found Miriam was right. She found that she really didn't want anything to happen to him. Douglas made his way through the undergrowth. It took a while, but finally he came to where he suspected the bandits to be. He soon saw he was right. He could see men hiding in the bushes. He crept around checking exactly how many bandits there were. He was horrified to see there were at least 20. That was not the worst of it. These were not ordinary bandits. These were men in uniform. He saw two men talking, one of which he took for the captain. He made his way forward until he could hear what was being said. They should be here soon. The Lady Isabel is not to be touched. You and your men can enjoy her maid, though. She's very pretty according to all reports. The bishop is to be spared, but his little friend is to die. If there is anyone else in the party, they die, too. The Baxter wants that bitch all to himself. He wants to hear her scream and plead as he enjoys himself with her. He intends to send her home a broken bitch, willing to anything to escape the lash. No man will want her after he's finished with her. Douglas had heard enough. He made his way back through the woods to where the others were waiting. We have to find another way round. Why? Asked Isabel. There are at least 20 men down there. They are after you. They are the Baxter's men. Apparently he wishes to hear you scream and plead as he enjoys himself with you. He intends to send you home a broken bitch. He also knows about Bishop Radcliffe and Carlos here. You are to be spared, but your friend dies. You, Brianna, are to be the men's plaything, and the rest of us are to be killed. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I really don't like the sound of that. The thing is, these are not ordinary bandits, but the Baxter's personal troops. I have no doubt that one-on-one I could take any of them. But 20, together? That's a whole different proposition. We cannot beat all of them. They are trained men. To try and go through would be suicide. We need to go back to the last town and find another way round. They all looked at him, horrified. Why would he do such a thing? Asked Paul. He is a monster, that's why. He asked for my hand 10 years ago. I refused him then. This is the real reason for the warring between us. He cannot stand being refused. He frightened off all other suitors. I was to be married to Earl Tathlon. He is at least 70, but he is powerful. My father was hoping that he would send troops and finish the Baxter, once and for all. I just cannot do it. He is old and ugly. The thought of giving myself to him makes me feel sick to the stomach. I cannot, and will not, do it. With that she broke down. Douglas moved forward and gathered the weeping woman in his arms. She clung to him, sobs racking her body. She looked up at him with terror in her eyes. Please don't let him take me. I know how he treats women. Please, promise me you won't let him take me alive. Douglas looked at the terrified woman. No, he won't take you. Now listen, all of you. We need to reorganize everything we have. We will return to the last town we passed. We will get some pack horses and abandon or sell the wagon. We can then take some of the less well-known tracks. I'm afraid we may have to abandon the idea of getting to Riverdale. We've been heading southwest. We'll head southeast and make our way to Bridgeport. I know a few people there. We will be among friends who will help us. Young man, I was tasked to take the Lady Isabel to Riverdale. They would not dare to harm a man of the cloth. No, I don't think they would, but they know of your relationship with Carlos here. They will kill him on sight. Now if that will not harm you, then you are a better actor than I gave you credit for. Though why you would feign love for a man that clearly adores you, I do not know. They all looked at him in horror. It was Carlos who spoke up. You have known for some time, haven't you? I overheard you speaking to Lady Isabel. You were telling her of your companions, Charlie and Mark. What you said was beautiful. I wish I could have met them. They were fine soldiers, and even finer friends. They saved my life more than once. I considered them my brothers. I could not, and would not condemn them. They found love in the most horrendous circumstances. Who were we to deny them their happiness? They all nodded their heads in agreement. Without any further argument, they turned the wagon round and headed in the opposite direction. Isabel rode close to Douglas, almost afraid to let him out of her sight. This did not go unnoticed by the others. Douglas told Lieutenant Allen to ride up ahead and to shout if he saw anything. He himself rode at the rear. Something was wrong. Something was troubling him. How did the Baxter's men know they would be coming this way? Was this common knowledge, or was there a spy in her father's court? Thinking about it, he would be very surprised if there wasn't someone supplying the Baxter with information. The thought made him chuckle. They made their way back towards the inn they had spent the previous night. It was still quite early, so Douglas told them he wanted to press on. Isabel had ridden next to him all day. He leaned over towards her. "Milady, I'm afraid that the relative comfort of the inns are a thing of the past just now. They will soon realize that their trap had been spotted. What I need to know is, did your father make common knowledge his intention to place you within the convent at Riverdale?" "No. To the best of my knowledge, the only people who knew were the bishop, his companion, and Michael." "Why do you ask?" "They knew you were coming. They only knew about you, the bishop and Brianna. They did not know about Michael or the rest of us. When we were about to leave, Michael approached the bishop telling him that he was a guide and knew the way to Riverdale. He agreed to a ridiculously low fee. I now think he was simply there to spend time with Brianna. I think you are right. I don't think he has been outside his hometown before. He certainly has never traveled very far. Still, I cannot judge him harshly. Men have done much more foolish things for love." He smiled at her, and to his surprise she returned it. He looked at her amazed at her beauty. When she smiled, her whole face lit up. "You should smile more. It suits you." She blushed and lowered her eyes. It was then that he knew the Baxter would never get her, nor would any man as long as he had breath in his body. "Ride up to the wagon. Stay close to it. I need to check something. Tell Paul to find a good spot for a camp. I won't be long." She nodded, then reached out and took his hand. His breath stopped at her touch. "Be careful. I would hate anything to happen to you." He turned his horse and rode back along the trail. Only when he was certain they were not being followed did he return to the party. He soon caught up with them. They had pulled off into a clearing, well back from the road with no obvious trails leading away into the trees. He complimented Paul on his choice of campsite. "Oh, it wasn't me. It was young Simon. We found one earlier, but he vetoed it, saying it looked too much like one of your honey traps. He's the one who found this place." Douglas looked over at the beaming lad. "Well done. You have chosen well. Let's get the camp set up. Same system as before. We use that tree there for our necessary. Again, I don't think I have to warn you of the dangers of wandering around, do I?" They all shook their heads. "Can I come with you?" asked an excited Simon. "May I as well?" asked Alan. "Yes, but you must do exactly as I say. Watch carefully, and once the traps are set, only step where I step." They disappeared into the trees. Douglas showed them how to set his traps. Although it took a little longer than usual, Douglas was pleased to be passing his knowledge on to his young protege. They returned to the camp to the smell of a wonderful meal. He was somewhat surprised when Lady Isabel came over to him, carrying 2 bowls of food. He saw Miriam and Paul smile at this, giving a quick glance to the others. No one else seemed to have noticed anything strange, so Douglas just shook his head. He thanked Isabel for her kindness, and again was rewarded by one of her wonderful smiles. They sat down to eat. "Thank you again, Miriam. Yet again, you have excelled yourself. I can see why Paul married you. He truly is a lucky man," Douglas complimented her. "It wasn't just me. Lady Isabel helped as well." Douglas looked at her in amazement. "A rare beauty, a true shot with the bow, and now a wonderful cook? Whoever does marry you will be a fortunate man indeed." She shot him another of her dazzling smiles, and positively glowed with pleasure at his compliment. "I didn't do much. I only helped chop some vegetables." Douglas was astounded. Not only Douglas, Bishop Radcliffe looked over with surprise as well. He had known Isabel for many years, and considered her to be one of the most spoilt and self-centered women it had ever been his misfortune to encounter, saving only her mother, who, in his opinion, was incapable of even getting out of her own way. To even think of helping let alone actually doing something. Well, it must be a miracle. They soon finished their meal and were settling down for the night. Douglas instructed them on a watch pattern. Lieutenant Allen and David were to take the first watch. Michael and Paul were to take the middle watch, and he and Harry would take the last watch. He did not have to remind them of the consequences of falling asleep. They all noticed that Isabel had moved her bedroll next to Douglas's. During the night, Douglas woke. He heard Isabel quietly weeping in her sleep. He reached over and put his arm around her. Isabel was running. Someone was chasing her. They were getting closer and closer. She could not get away. She could see the Baxters' leering face before her. Suddenly something touched her. She awoke with a scream. "It's all right, I'm here. No one will harm you. I'll look after you." She heard Douglas's voice. He had his arm around her. She felt safe. She wept with relief. She felt safe in his arms. She quieted and turned towards him, holding him close. Gradually, her sobbing subsided. "Sorry, I was having a bad dream." "It's okay, we all have those from time to time." She looked up to him and gave him her dazzling smile. With that, she laid her head on his shoulder and went back to sleep. Douglas lay there totally stunned. She was, if not then certainly one of the most beautiful women he had ever seen. She was also a lady, aristocracy no less. Yet here she was, lying in his arms, and holding on to him for dear life. It's obvious that the Baxter terrifies her. It must be that. It must be out of fear that she clings to me. It couldn't be anything else. What would a beautiful, rich, powerful woman like her want with an old ex-mercenary like me? I have nothing to offer a woman like her. With these thoughts running through his mind, he finally fell asleep. When he was awoken for his turn of the watch, Isabel rose with him. She stayed beside him, talking quietly until dawn. She shivered. He put his arm around her. She did not pull away. She asked about his early life, what it was like growing up as the youngest of 7, of what his mother was like, about his father. She saw him get a faraway look in his eyes. He told her of his mother, a small, wiry woman who could make a feast from nothing. They had been poor, yes, but they were never hungry. There was always enough to go around. His father was a large man, always laughing and joking. He could see him, now, leading the plow horses in from the fields. His mother would be sitting by the fire sewing shirts and trousers for them. He told of traveling to the local fair, of seeing dancing bears and tumbling men and women, of seeing his mother's face light up with joy when his father bought her a lovely brooch. Then he told her of how she had cried when he, Douglas, had told them of his decision to leave, and of how his father had shaken his hand and told him that he understood why he was leaving. His father had said that whatever happened, he would always have a home there with them. He spoke of how his father had pushed a small bag of coins into his hand. He then asked about her life, what it was like growing up at the castle. She told him of her mother, a vain, supercilious woman, always berating the servants, never smiling, except maybe at some young guardsman that had caught her eye. She spoke of how restricting she had found life there, never being able to run and play as she had seen other children do. All her life it had been no, Isabel, leave that, Isabel, that's a servant's job, Isabel. Her only outlet had been her lessons. She could read and write. She could add, subtract, and multiply. She understood accounts, ledgers, and trade agreements. She had not been able to put any of this to good use, though. Oh no. Her only job was to be a vapid, silly little ornament, good for draping on one's arm as the menfolk discussed important business. She was treated as a commodity, one to be traded for the best bride price. Yes, her father would pay a dowry, but her husband would bring land, wealth, and men to fight the Baxter. She was sick of it. He could hear the jealousy in her voice when she spoke of Michael and Brianna, of how they would marry for love and not duty, something that would always be denied to her. Finally, dawn broke. The rest of the camp started to wake. Douglas could see the smiles and grins as they saw him and Isabel, together. They were not the only couple to be snuggled up together. Both the bishop and Carlos, as well as Michael and Brianna, were also sharing bedrolls. Miriam and Paul were in the wagon. Both boys had slept underneath. There were a lot of happy, smiling people that morning. Everyone rose and started the morning chores. Douglas went into the woods and disabled the traps he had set the previous night, while the rest of the men folk gathered firewood and collected water from a nearby stream. The women got on with breakfast. After eating, Douglas continued training the men. Isabel surprised everyone by asking to be allowed to join in. She particularly wanted to learn how to use a dagger and sword. Douglas found a practice sword that was just right for her. If you try to use a sword that is too heavy, it makes you slow. That can be fatal. It's much better to have a shorter, lighter sword that you can move quickly, than to have some heavy thing that really is only good for chopping wood. They practiced for an hour, then packed up their things and continued on their way. They were an incongruous column as they traveled along. There was Douglas, with his 8 laden horses in tow. Lady Isabel, riding side saddle, had 4 horses in her train, but these were led by Michael. The bishop also had 4 horses, being led by Carlos. Then there was the wagon of Paul and Miriam. Brianna, Simon, and Peter followed up the rear on their own mounts. Lieutenant Allen and his men had their horses with small packs tied on their backs. Isabel had retained her sword and was practicing as they rode. Douglas watched her as he could see she was getting frustrated with the limitations of riding side saddle. He turned to her. "We need to find you another saddle. If you wish to use that from horseback, then you need to be sitting astride. In fact, from horseback you are better off with your bow to start with. Other than that, you need a lance." He unshipped his lance and showed her how he would use it from horseback. It was not the long couched lance, but a shorter, thicker weapon. "We are called mercenaries in this part of the world, but in other places, they refer to us as freelancers. This is why we can fight from horseback just as easily as on foot. Some men specialize in how they fight. Some are pikemen, others archers, some are expert swordsmen. They would fight in a shield wall. I've been doing this so long I seem to have picked up all the skills and can fight anywhere. This is my trade, my craft. Although I do not wish to boast, I am very good at what I do. Of that I have no doubt. All my life, all I have been told what I cannot or must not do. I have never been allowed anything but to do embroidery and be pretty. I am an ornament to be draped upon one's arm, no more, no less. Even Brianna has more freedom than I. She and Michael will be able to marry. She can marry the man she loves, whereas I must marry the man my father picks for me. The choices I have are a brute or a man old enough to be my grandfather. He's even older than my own father. You are the first person to show me I can do something useful. You allow me to try. You have no idea what that means to me. I know I will never be very good, but at least you let me try. Thank you. We will do as you suggest. We will find me another saddle." "Very good, milady. We'll see what's available in the next town." "Isabel, please," she told him, reaching out to touch his arm. He smiled at her and said, "Isabel it is." When they reached the next town, Douglas discovered there was great benefit in traveling with a bishop. They went to the local priest, who was only too pleased to show them around the place and ensure they received the best treatment and prices. A new saddle was acquired, as well as new riding clothes. These caused a minor scandal, as many thought no lady should wear breeches out in public. The wagon was sold, and more pack horses obtained. Father Patrick was a kindly man. He had been the priest there for many years. He was overjoyed to be of assistance to his bishop and his esteemed guests. The night was spent in the priest's house. Isabel took the priest's own bed, with Brianna having a small cot, and the bishop and his manservant taking the guest quarters. Paul and Miranda were offered the servant's room, and the rest made do in the stables. Douglas asked Bishop Radcliffe, Lieutenant Allen, and Isabel into the study. "Thanks for coming. There's something I wish to discuss in private." "That's okay, what's on your mind?" asked Isabel. "There are several things. First, how badly is this conflict hurting your father?" "Very badly. Our rents are down by at least half, and with what we're having to pay out in extra soldiers, well, let's just say we're feeling the pinch." "Very well. Who knew about you coming to Riverdale?" "Well, everyone did. It was no secret, particularly after Isabel received the news. I think her screaming could be heard halfway across town." The bishop told them. Douglas smiled as Isabel blushed at the memory. She had thrown a first-class patty. Everything within reach was thrown, including her mother's prized glass bowl. Fortunately, it didn't smash. One of the guardsmen had superb reactions and had caught it. "The other thing is, if everyone knew you were coming here, why so little protection? For men, one bishop, his manservant, and a maid? Not really an army, is it? Tell me, Alan, why do you think you were given this task?" "Well," he began nervously. "It's okay. I know all about my mother's little ways," Isabel told him. He swallowed and said, "Lady Cynthia asked if I would be assigned the task of guarding her bedchambers. When I arrived, I knocked, and she bade me enter. As I entered, I saw that Lady Cynthia was in the bathtub. She then bid me to help wash her back, as she could not reach. I left and went to fetch a serving girl. Next thing I know, I'm assigned here." "I see. Your mother has a thing for younger men, does she?" "Father has a thing for younger women, especially serving girls. They cannot refuse. He has been after Brianna for months. It was a full-time job keeping her safe from him. Why do you think she was so eager to accompany us? Mother just thinks that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And you, Bishop, does he know about you and Carlos?" "Yes, I believe he does." "What are you driving at? I think you have all been set up. The soldiers you were given would not have been your first choice, would they?" "No, they were known as the laziest fools we had. They would do anything to avoid duty. Their biggest ambition was to collect their pay, go to the nearest tavern, get drunk, and go whoring. Think about it. You, Isabel, would have been in the Baxters' clutches. there would have been no reason for continuing the war. The three stooges would have been taken care of. The bishop's friend Carlos would have been dealt with, and after what the Baxter had done to you, your father could have demanded to the king that the Baxter marry you with no dowry. There is something else. My father has never fathered any other children. Of all the maids he has taken, not one has given him a scumsucker. The way he has carried on, the place should be overrun with them. Yes, Bishop, I do know the rumors. They say my real father was a captain of the guard. He was sent away many years ago. I never met him, nor am I likely to. My father has a brother who is a very successful merchant. My father is heavily indebted to him. He wants his son to be the next Lord Blackmore. This just gets better and better. A tiny guard full of those who have upset, or simply screwed up. A bishop with tastes he does not agree with, and a daughter who may or may not be his. I say we forget about Riverdale, lordships, and all the rest, and make our own way in the world. We can't do that, cried Isabel. Why not? Your father has, in effect, thrown you to the wolves. The bishop and Alan, too. The bishop would know that it was their love for each other that cost Carlos his life, and should he ever seek happiness again in that way again? Well, we all know what would happen, don't we? Alan has been cast out for refusing your mother. Who would bet that upon his return, if he did manage to return, he would not be accused of assault by her? No, your past lives are over. You would be fools to return. They all looked at him in horror, but they knew he was right. It was a very tense and confused Isabel that tossed and turned in her bed that night. Would she? Could she? The morning would tell. She would know in the morning. Dear listeners, next part of the story will be released soon. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.